Alright, let's get the music back up. That's not the right Chrome window. And let's remove Sparking Zero from the pool. By the way, these were the pulls of the wheel of, I don't know what to play. Here's what to play. Two fucking doubles. And you wanna know the unfortunate thing? Taking Sparking Zero out of the pool actually makes there be a higher chance of getting Danganronpa a third time. So, because I assume anybody who might be here was not here at the beginning, um, here's our list of stuff to do. Tears of the Kingdom, Karaoke, Pokemon Red and Blue, Xenogears, Xenoblade 3, uh, Ship of Harkinian speedruns doing the all-child dungeons category. If you don't know what Ship of Harkinian is, it's a PC port of The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. Xenosaga, do some Duolingo Japanese lessons. Ender Lilies, which is a Metroidvania game that I played on stream once. Banjo-Kazooie, which is supposed to be a really good 3D platformer that I've never touched. Danganronpa V3. React to stuff on YouTube. Xenoblade 2 New Game Plus. Ocarina of Time Randomizer. Make a tier list or two. Maybe pull up a random one. Or Persona 4 Golden. I rolled it 4 times, gotten Danganronpa V3 twice, and then Dragon Ball Sparking Zero twice. And if you reach 1,000 channel points, you can force me to spin the wheel in the middle of whatever I'm doing. And if you reach 10,000, you can add stuff to the wheel. Reacting to stuff on YouTube sounds like an easy way to give you a super long video. I mean, theoretically. It just depends on what, it depends on if the wheel lands on it. So let's spin the wheel and see what we get. I'm hoping for not karaoke, because I'm not in the mood for karaoke yet. Okay. Let me Duolingo. I already have an account, but I don't remember my login. So I'm logging in on the screen that the stream cannot see, because it might be the email that is my full name. It is not the email that is my full name. Okay. Aw. You know what? I could just check it on my phone. That would be the easy thing to do. Hey jackass, what email did I use? It is the one that's my full name. Wrong password. Okay. Huzzah! Just make sure. Okay, there's nothing immediately on the screen that would dox me. But here we go. Let's do this. Do this. Give me chat. It's probably gonna want me to. Okay, so let's see. Where do you know any Japanese? Don't worry, I'm only gonna do like 2 or 3 things and then I'll respin the wheel. Just to keep my streak going because 60 days, I want to keep that rolling. I'll keep it simple. Let's learn this.
発汗 執筆
Okay, sorry. Um, good duty.
一点
You know, auditory stuff, you can't read it. Okay, so this teaches you the basics. Kan.
発汗
She. Shibitsu? A.
まっすぐ
Ma.
ま
Su.
ぐ
Here, when I get back to the menu, I'll like give you the basic rundown. Ika.
抜
Basui.
粋発
Akan.
汗知ってるしっかり執筆
Shibitsu. Iten.
一点
Akan.
ハッピ
Happy. Gusuri.
ぐっすり
Iten. There we go.
結果
Ka.
か
Shiteru.
知ってる
Isu.
必須
Akan.
発汗
Shibitsu.
執筆執筆
I know I'm kind of like running through this without really like talking about anything. Sweet.
切って
And I apologize for that. I will explain in a moment. Alright, 61 days. Brilliant. Okay. So, you might know this already. There are 3 alphabets: hiragana, katakana, and kanji. As you can see, I've not done anything in katakana yet. Because I'm trying to finish off hiragana, and it can be time consuming. Basically, you have the basic sounds, and then you have they have actual names. I just call them modifiers because it takes the hiragana that you normally look at, and it changes the sound that it makes, so it modifies it. And there's an ad starting in 60 seconds. I'm gonna snooze that one. And then you have the combos where it's the main one and then a small one next to it. That small one will make it sound like
9
slightly different and have like a different meaning. And then if you add the tiny this, which is normally su,
つ
it makes it double the consonant that's following it. Is that a lot to take in all at once? Probably. But if I go back up and do learn the characters, you see that it's asking for hosa. So you would go look for the one that starts with ho, which is all of them, and the one that ends with sa, which is this one, and look for the double consonant.
発作接線
Makes sense so far.
接線
So saki would be saki with the double
さ
consonant.
っきホット
That one.
ホット
And a lot of it is memorization. But the only reason I put this in the thing was to make sure I get my streak extended, because judging by the time that I started, the end time will be right around time to go to bed. So I wanted to have it in the wheel just in case, so that I can like extend my streak. Kukiri. It's gonna be one of these. It's gonna be one of these. It's gonna have the double consonant, so it's
く
gonna
っ
be
きり
that. Kuzukiri is gonna be
くず
this.
きり
Gusari.
ぐっさり
Gus. Gusu. Oh, gusu.
ぐつぐつ
Seseto.
欠席
Ke.
けせき楽器
Gaki. Up.
アップさっさと
Sasato.
ささと
No.
さっさと
There we go. There's a difference. Ippun.
1分
Hottori.
ほっとり
Hosaku.
発作
Ichibun.
一文
Okay, there we go.
挟む実際にじ
Chi.
さいに必殺
Isatsu. Sosen. I'm still on Sparking Zero, aren't I?
率先国旗
We're there. Alright, let's switch this to just chatting. There we go. A lot better.
国旗国旗
Kekin.
欠勤
Kasen.
合戦
Oh. Kenden.
健全
Kaseki.
化石
Kese.
消すやっと
Hiyato.
やと
Hattori.
ゲップ
Keppu. One of the hardest things that I noticed Asari, when I first started was learning how to do the soft F sound, because it's always a soft F sound in Japanese,
さっき
and only knowing English, it's hard to to train yourself to not do the full hard F. Oh, what did I do?
脱線
I wasn't paying close enough attention. Satsuki. Satsuki. Zatsuki.
1分
No. Totally. Cool. Alright, we're done with that. Sorry to bore you. I just wanted a chance to extend my streak. Alright, let me reconfigure all of my windows. Alright, now for the real wheel spin. Oh, I just realized there's an even higher chance now for Danganronpa V3. Oh my god, it's gonna be react to stuff. Well, if you have anything you want me to react to, go ahead and, I guess, send... It won't let you send it on Discord, so I guess Discord would be the best place to send it to me? Did I say Discord twice? It won't let you send it here in Twitch chat, so I guess send it to me on Discord. Assuming we have at least one server in common. Worst case. Although I will, like, hopefully it won't be too bad. We'll find out. Yeah. If you have anything specific you want me to react to, feel free to send it to me. It probably won't let you send it here in Twitch chat. So, some form of Discord is probably your best bet. Let's see. For the first video, I'll just let the YouTube algorithm find something. What would make a good React video? Not like an exact length requirement, just be reasonable. Just so, you know, there's not like a super long video that we're like watching for 90 hours or something. Basically, don't send me the Bomberman Jetters documentary. Because that's a thing, by the way. Yeah, 8, almost 9 hours. Yeah, don't send me something this long. Be reasonable. I can mess with an hour. An hour is fine. I wouldn't go too much longer than that, though. Also, shout out to Bakugan Battle Brawlers. Such a good, like, franchise as a kid that kind of, like, disappeared like that. Story of the only unbeatable Pokemon team. From Wolfie. Okay. I can fuck with that. Why are we getting DoorDash notifications? Are we ordering more stuff on DoorDash? No, okay. If the video would load.
There's only
There
one
we go.
Pokemon team in the conversation for the strongest of all time. There's only one Pokemon team that has achieved a level of dominance previously thought to be impossible.
You were debating sending his magnum opus, but that is 4.5 hours long. Jesus.
Fraction of the power that it possessed. There's only one Pokemon team that has ever truly felt unbeatable. That's
Unbeatable.
made you feel stupid for even daring to think that it could be stopped. There is only one Pokemon team that I fear, and its name is Big Six.
Big Six.
It's difficult to put into words just how unbelievable this team was. Those of you not around for the era of Big Six.
Salamence, Groudon, Xerneas, Smeargle, Talonflame, Kangaskhan? Mega Kangaskhan.
Might really struggle to comprehend it, and I don't blame you. Because
Oh,
there's
that
never
makes
been another
sense.
team that even got close.
Oh no,
They can use it as
Landorus.
a reference. Even if you didn't play during the Big Six era, which was more technically during the 2016 season, if you're active in the competitive Pokemon space, you've most likely at least come across the name of it before. You've heard the team mentioned that broke so many players, that threatened to consume the entire game itself. But maybe you don't know much more than the Pokemon that were on the team and the fact that it is really scary. Personally, that makes
I've
me
never
happy.
gone
I'm
up
glad
against
that
a
so many
Mega
of you
Kangaskhan, but I've heard, like, war stories. And oh my god. Oh my god.
to go through what us old heads went through, that you didn't have to suffer the way that we suffered. If you started following
You have so many
Pokemon
trauma,
since
Petra. I get it. Wholeheartedly, I get it. Thank God I never had to face one myself. Also, there is a package at the door. Just give me 1 second. Okay, so, before I continue the video, I heard that in Legends EA, there are no abilities. So, it's not gonna be quite as bad. Thank you. I don't know why today is so busy for stuff at the door. It's weird. It's never this busy.
you'll have experienced a game that was, at least by comparison, much healthier, so much more vibrant. But 2016 and the reign of Big Six can only be described as a travesty, as we stared into the abyss and 6 Pokemon stared.
Was this before or after the Dark
Before
Void
the
nerf?
Big Six is a really important part of understanding competitive Pokemon's history. And even beyond that,
I don't
it's a big
remember.
part of my personal history. You see, Big Six played an enormous role in my own story. And in a way, despite all
Before,
my awful
okay.
memories of the team, I wouldn't be here without it. But I'm getting ahead of myself. In order to understand just why what Big Six did was so
It caused the nerf. Okay.
Again, we first have
Gotcha.
to understand what exactly the team was, and specifically what makes it the strongest team that competitive Pokemon has ever seen. To understand Big Six, we first need to understand the format that this team emerged from. The 2016 season used what is known as a double restricted format. These formats, which are typically the last ones in a generation's life cycle before we move to the next game, allows trainers to use, well, 2 restricted Pokemon, the normally banned behemoth Pokemon that adorn box arts, and the Pokemon that oppose them. To best understand Big Six, we need to start with the restricted Pokemon, and in 2016 there were 2 that stood clearly above the rest. Let's start with one of the most legendary Pokemon ever created, Groudon. For those of you who started following competitive Pokemon during the last year, you might be surprised to see Groudon here. After all, in the current rule set, Groudon is nothing more than a C-tier restricted Pokemon, probably the 9th or 10th best one in the game.
Yeah, Groudon was really good in Gen 6 from what I remember. Like, dude, so during Gen 6, there was a team I ran. It was more of a meme team than anything, but it got me places. And the 2 main mons for that were Golduck and Shedinja. Now, Shedinja, as you probably know, can only be hit by super effective attacks. What happens if you change its type? You screw with a lot of people's muscle memory. Soak Wonder Guard, baby! And then I got a little bit more creative, and this part was a little bit harder to make consistent. Oh god, what was it? There was a move that adds the grass type, I believe. Trevenant had it, I think. Let me double check that. Where's it? Yeah, Forest's Curse. It adds the grass type, right? So take the Soak Shedinja, add grass type through Forest Curse. Now, if I remember correctly, the only thing it was weak to was flying. And now there was some flying, but it was a lot less common than what it was trying to be hit by. And, very, meme oriented, but it still got me places. But Groudon was, very quick to, shut that shit down because it's fucking Groudon.
Pokemon to choose from. In fact, Groudon had already leveraged its titanic power
Right.
and bulk
Poison and
in the
Bug.
world the previous time it was legal, 6 years before Big Six, back in 2010. But that Groudon and the Groudon
But
of the
weirdly, I
modern
didn't see
era
Poison or
are
Bug
not
too
the
much.
same
Maybe
as
I just
the
got
Groudons
lucky.
we were dealing with back in 2016. Because in 2016, Groudon received a new form thanks to its mascot status of Omega Ruby, a form known as Primal Groudon. Now, keep in mind,
Shout out to Primal
Omega
Groudon, by the
was a
way.
great restricted Pokemon for over
Sorry, I keep pausing. We're gonna take a long time to get through this video. Back when Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire came out in 2014, I was still in high school, and I would bring my 3DS for the ride because it was I was still living in New York at the time. So I would ride the public transportation, and it would take me an hour one way to get to school. Mostly waiting for buses. So I would play the game little bits here and there. Eventually I got to the Cave of Origin where you get your box legend. Um, and I had like a crowd of like 10 or 15, maybe even 20 people like watching me play this game during lunch, trying to catch Groudon in a Pokeball because I am that kind of masochist. And like getting hyped up for each shake and then just a loud explosion of disappointment every time it failed. And it was really fucking funny.
A decade. It won Worlds the first time its base form was legal. It got second at Worlds the next time it was legal in 2022. Primal Groudon.
It's just like, imagine a pack of sweaty high schoolers, like, screaming at the top of their lungs.
Is to regular Groudon, as Urshifu is to Hitmonchan. Not even in the same ballpark. So, what makes Primal Groudon so much stronger? Well, in 2016,
we did get asked what was going on by like a security person.
A signature move at that.
Once they saw it was just us messing around and nothing serious.
Being slightly inaccurate. Truthfully, out of everything the Groudon received, this one's probably the least impactful. Primal Groudon also gained access to the Fire typing, a typing that maybe it should have had all along. This new type not only gives Primal Groudon a 50% boost on all of its fire moves that already were getting a 50% boost from the Groudon sets up whenever it switches energy with ground. Ground's weaknesses to ice and grass moves are resisted by fire type attacks, and the rock weakness that fire has is resisted by the ground typing. Of course, there is one glaring problem. With
water.
A quadruple weakness to water, Primal Groudon had a glaring weakness, a built-in check to what was looking to be one of the strongest Pokemon of all time. Of course, the sunlight does cut water moves damage in half, but that'll still result in water moves doing double damage when you factor in all the multipliers.
Yeah.
Despite setting the sun up and taking away the rain, it still will take so much damage. Taking almost double that will almost certainly be too much. Except that setting the sun up is what regular Groudon does, not what Primal Groudon does. Primal Groudon's ability is not the classic Drought, but instead a new signature ability called Desolate Land. This is effectively the mega evolved version of Strong Sunlight. Desolate Land still activates abilities like Chlorophyll and Solar Power and any other sun-based ability, and it also still powers up fire moves by 50%. But there are two clear differences between the two weather conditions. First, unlike normal weather conditions, which only last for 5 turns, primordial weather lasts forever until the setter switches out.
Wait. What did that say at the bottom? Come on. Ask your Pokemon team if Desolate Land is right for you. If Desolate Land lasts more than 72 hours, contact a licensed Pokemon professor immediately. Your ecosystem might be at risk.
Setter switches out. The only other way to remove the weather is to override it with another primordial weather. Weather conditions only available to Primal Kyogre and Mega Rayquaza.
Yeah.
Rain and even a regular sun will fail to make an impact against Desolate Land.
Yeah.
Even more impactful, because instead of cutting all the damage that water moves do in half like regular sun does, inside of Desolate Land, all water moves evaporate completely, doing exactly 0 damage. So actually, Primal Groudon can switch in without fear against Primal Kyogre, because
I forgot that it was like complete nullification of water. Holy shit.
as long as it has the advantage in the weather war, it has nothing to fear. This was a clear-cut advantage over Kyogre's Primordial Sea, which also had the same effect of extinguishing fire-type moves, but Primal Groudon's go-to attack was Precipice Blades, a ground-type attack capable of doing massive damage to Primal Kyogre. In other words, Primal Groudon could safely against Kyogre, but the same wasn't true in reverse. Kyogre mostly uses its rain offensively, but Primal Groudon put its own weather to work for both offensive purposes and defensive ones. Of course, Primal Groudon does still have one weakness when the sun was blazing: to ground, but this weakness was not especially easy to exploit. First, most ground-type moves are physical, and Primal Groudon has tremendous physical bulk.
Yes.
Second, there just weren't that many great ground types, other than Primal Groudon, of course.
Right.
Yes, Landorus Therian existed, but given that it had to rely on Earthquake, it didn't actually do as much damage as you might expect. And frankly, it just wasn't that good in this format because of how strong the other Pokemon were. And to be fair, I did win a regional with Landorus Therian during this year, so I feel somewhat qualified to tell you that it actually wasn't that strong. In other words,
I mean, it did alright.
good Pokemon to hit Groudon with super effective ground type attacks.
It's gonna be another
The
Groudon.
only real way to hit it with super effective damage if you didn't deal with Primordial Sun. Your best and kind of your only real answer was your own Primal Groudon. If players wanted to open up the water weakness, they usually had to spend a turn switching around, giving Primal Groudon time to launch the devastating Precipice Blades. Its job was to sit in the field, be nearly impossible to kill, and output consistent damage. Even with Precipice Blades' less than stellar accuracy, Groudon was able to be active for so many turns that you could afford to miss a Precipice Blades here or there.
Yeah.
Groudon is a Pokemon with no real equivalent in the modern games. Calyrex, Miraidon, Urshifu, Fluttermane. These are all great Pokemon. And
Shout out to
thankfully, they're all
Calyrex.
broken in their own special ways. But dealing with them is nothing like dealing with Primal Groudon. These Pokemon have counters. It's kind of a crazy concept putting myself back in 2016 brain, but like, you can stop them if you want. It just might be a little tough. Primal Groudon.
Where there's a will, there's a way. Groudon? Nah.
The first restricted Pokemon, and the Pokemon that was not the single biggest threat on Big 6. Let's talk about the strongest Pokemon on the team. What you have to understand is that Xerneas is the mascot legendary for Pokemon X, and this was the game that introduced the fairy typing to the series. Game Freak clearly wanted players to use these new
I
fairy type
remember
Pokemon,
Xerneas
and
being,
the
like,
fairy type Pokemon
big,
so strong, in fact,
but
they ended up making it the single best type in the game.
I
even
didn't
letting
realize it
elite
was, like,
Pokemon
that
Wigglytuff
bad.
win tournaments thanks to their newfound fairy typing. And Xerneas is the cover legendary Pokemon to come out of these games. Game Freak absolutely didn't want it to be seen as weak, as in a way it would be the mascot for not only the games but for the typing as a whole. So they decided to make what is, in my opinion, the single most broken Pokemon ever created. Xerneas was the best type in the game, and it has a great ability that powers up its fairy moves even further, as well as the fairy moves of its teammates. But what really makes it broken is its signature move, a move that still makes my
Geomancy?
stomach drop every time I think about it. A move?
Yeah, oh god.
Now, Geomancy doesn't do any damage, so how good can it be? To give you an idea, let's talk about another attack, Quiver Dance. It's widely accepted that Quiver Dance is just about the best quote-unquote standard move that you can use to power up one of your Pokemon. By attacking just once, your Pokemon will receive not one, not two, but 3 stat boosts, one each in its special attack, special defense.
All the homies love Quiver
With just
Dance.
one attack, you become stronger, tankier, and faster. It's a pretty absurd move, and it's mostly relegated to bug-type Pokemon in order to keep it from taking over the game. Geomancy
And then
is
there's
similar to Quiver
Smeargle.
Dance. In fact, it also boosts your special attack, special defense, and speed. Except, it isn't on a bug-type Pokemon, but on the strongest fairy-type legendary Pokemon ever created. Oh yeah, and it doesn't raise each of those stats once, like Quiver Dance, but instead, twice. By clicking Geomancy a single time, Xerneas receives 6 stat boosts, doubling its special attack, special defense, and speed stats. Even Game Freak surely realized how completely unbalanced, how unthinkably game-breaking this is. So, in order to keep Xerneas in check, they made Geomancy take 2 turns.
Sure.
So average out to an average of 1 boost per turn, making it a slightly worse Quiver Dance in theory. Except that they messed up, because while Geomancy is supposed to take 2 turns to use, there is one single way around it, with a held item called the Power Herb. Power Herb is a consumable item that, once per battle, lets a Pokemon use a charge attack move in just 1 turn rather than your usual 2.
Why would they let that work for something like that? There's no fucking way. Just, My question is, did they do it intentionally? Like, did they know what they were doing when they did it? Or was it just a weird quirk of how the 2-turn moves work, and it just happened to work for this as well? Like, did somebody have to manually go through all the moves and be like, hey, this is a 2-turn move, this is a 2-turn move, this is a 2-turn move? Or is it just some weird function of how the 2-turn moves work?
So moves like Solar Beam, Sky Attack, Phantom Force, Dive, and Fly, these types of moves, which we're all familiar with, can be used in one turn rather than the usual
Once players
two.
figured it
You might
out,
think,
though,
well,
they loved it.
those are
Oh,
all, those are all attacking moves. They do damage. Surely it doesn't apply to Geomancy as well.
About
That's a setup
that.
move, right? Well, that's where you're wrong. Because it does apply to Geomancy, which means that suddenly Geomancy isn't 2 Quiver Dances over 2 turns.
Question. Can you Geomancy and then recycle? Does recycle count for Power Herb? Like, or does it only apply to berries? 'Cause I've only ever seen it used with berries, so I'm not sure. It does, but I don't think Xerneas gets the move. No, but Smeargle does. Smeargle does.
It's 2 Quiver Dances in 1 turn, all for the cost of holding 1 measly little red leaf. And that is just too much value. Yveltal might be the life-draining Pokemon, but Geomancy boosted Xerneas is the true avatar of destruction. Once it's set up, it can run through teams solo, outspeeding every opponent as it lays waste with Dazzling Gleams and Moonblasts, all while nearly invulnerable to special attacks thanks to its good natural bulk, now having doubled special defense.
And theoretically, if you have a Pokemon with like, Trick? Or like a move that gives a move to a target Pokemon, couldn't you technically give Xerneas a second Power Herb that way as well?
Xerneas was so powerful that it didn't even need to run any coverage moves. Between Fairy Aura and Geomancy, even Pokemon that resisted Fairy would find themselves to hit KO'd a lot of the time by Moonblast.
Right.
I saw almost no experimentation with a Pokemon's moves or item. Geomancy Power Herb was so strong that nobody felt the need to use anything else. What was really messed up is just how well Primal Groudon and Xerneas synergized with each other. Yes, both of them had incredibly powerful spread moves, which let them create incredibly tight pins. And yes, Groudon was incredibly physically bulky, while Xerneas was basically untouchable on the special side. But the most unfair part of playing against this duo was their typing. Part of the reason that Xerneas only needed to use Fairy moves, apart from Fairy Aura, was the fact that Primal Groudon filled in its gaps perfectly. Only 3 types resist Fairy: Steel, Poison, and Fire. All 3 of these types are weak to ground, and 2 of those types just happen to be Fairy weaknesses, both of which Primal Groudon also resists. On the flip side, every type that resists ground is neutral to Fairy. Against a boosted Xerneas, neutral might as well mean that you're actually quite weak to it. Outside of the typing, Xerneas covered Groudon's matchups very well. Primal Kyogre was kind of essential to letting any Pokemon one-shot Primal Groudon,
Damn it.
but Xerneas matched up incredibly well into Kyogre teams. Often these teams would try to run Tailwind to make Kyogre's Water Spout move first, but because Xerneas is so naturally fast, after a Geomancy, it still outruns Kyogre even if they have Tailwind up, which lets it weaken Water Spout's huge damage before they can attack. And given that Xerneas also has a +2 boost to its special defense, it can easily shrug off any of Kyogre's attacks. Once Kyogre was dealt with, Groudon would have permanent weather control, and likely a permanent dub in the winds column. And Xerneas and Primal Groudon aren't even the only Pokemon on this team with remarkably good synergy. See, X and Y didn't just introduce the Fairy typing, they also introduced Mega Evolutions. Mega Salamence was commonly accepted.
Oh, that's right. The fact that you had a Mega on top of the Primal because it's not a proper Mega Evolution. Yeah. Yeah, it keeps getting worse. But wait, there's more.
As one of the best Mega Evolutions in the game.
I forgot how bad Gen 6 was.
But what really made Salamence stand out
Oof.
was Aerolate. I think it might be Aerolate, but
It is Aerolate.
Aerolate. Nobody ever corrected me, so I'm going to say Aerolate. Anyway, this ability turns all normal type moves into flying type moves, and at the time, gave them all a 30% power boost. Flying is a great offensive type, but it's held back by its lack of good moves. With Aerialate, Mega Salamence suddenly not only had access to actual reliable flying type coverage, but it could do so using powered up moves that weren't even intended to be flying type.
Yeah.
As a bonus, Salamence was one of the few Mega Pokemon who helped your team out before Mega evolving, and it did so with one of the best abilities in the game, Intimidate. This was especially useful for Big 6, because while Xerneas has obvious synergy with Intimidate thanks to Geomancy boosting its special defense and Intimidate, boosting its physical defense effectively, Groudon also benefits thanks to its typing. Remember, the ground type moves are mainly physical, so with Intimidate around, your option was to either try and hit Groudon for neutral damage on the special side, or you could hit it for super effective damage, but into a huge physical defense stat while also having to battle through Salamence's Intimidates. On top of the attack drops, Mega Salamence brought utility via the move Tailwind, doubling the speeds of its team for the next 4 turns. Now keep in mind that this was 2 generations prior to dynamic speed being introduced to the game. If that doesn't make any sense, basically what you need to know is that in the current games, when you use a move that affects the speeds of the battle, it takes place immediately. For example, in the current games, if you have a Whimsicott Kyogre on the field and your Whimsicott uses Tailwind, your Kyogre immediately receives the benefit of having double speed. But that's not how it used to work. It used to be that the turn order was set at the beginning of the turn. So in that same example, if Whimsicott used Tailwind, Kyogre wouldn't receive the benefit of that Tailwind until the following turn.
I hate minor differences in the things like that. Also, I will pause. The fact that could change between generations, though. It just keeps getting worse. Every time I think we're done, it just keeps getting worse. Ooh, boy. Man. Welcome back. Yeah, I 100% forgot how bad Gen 6 was. Especially with shit like Salamence having Intimidate, Mega evolving into Aerolate. Oof. Just oof.
This is relevant to Mega Salamence is that it
actually
made it quite a good.
And then fucking Tailwind. I do like the change of it, like in modern games it changes the speed order on the fly. But ooh, boy.
Tailwind user, because nowadays most Tailwind Pokemon, not all of them, but most of them really like to have the Prankster ability just to make sure they can always get the immediate benefit to its partner. And back in the day, that was much less of a big deal. So, putting it all together, we have a
I do
Pokemon
like that change.
Not only passively supports its team with Intimidate, it could also support its team with its attack Tailwind. And that's just considering what Mega Salamence could do when it wasn't attacking.
Yeah.
Not one, but 2 great attacking
Yeah.
Mega Salamence often used both a physical and a special attack so that it could always use whichever one did more damage. It mostly used the insanely powerful Double Edge on the physical side for more burst damage.
Makes
and the
sense.
Spread attack, Hyper Voice on the special side.
That's right, Hyper Voice is a
When it
thing.
came to dealing with opposing Primal Groudon, Mega Salamence was also quite effective, with Hyper Voice doing actually a surprising amount of damage to the very frail Groudon that were most common at the beginning of the format. And being a flying dragon type with Intimidate, that's just about everything you could ask for when you're trying to find an answer to the Dawn.
Yeah.
Dragon typing,
An
Mega
answer
Salamence
to the
Xerneas
dawn.
wasn't
I love that.
too shabby either. Since it naturally outsped, it could set up Tailwind before they used Geomancy, or it could use its massive physical attack stat to launch Aerial 8 boosted double edges that really didn't care about Geomancy's boosts.
Yeah.
But if Salamance's matchups against Zerndon were good, the only thing better might be its synergy with Zerndon, specifically Groudon. The only 3 types that resist flying are weak to ground, while flying hits 2 of the types that resist ground themselves for super effective damage, and hits the last one, flying itself, for neutral damage. This was a ridiculously strong Pokemon on its own, who was generally thought to be the second best Mega Pokemon in the game. Wait, second best? Why would the strongest Pokemon team of all time not use the best Mega Evolution?
About that.
Well, about that, on the whole, I think that I like Mega Evolution.
The war flashbacks to Mega Kangaskhan.
In fact, to be honest, I'm not even completely sure that I do like Mega Evolution. And when I think about why I feel that way, it all comes back to one single painful thought: Mega Kangaskhan in Generation 6. Mega Kangaskhan is another contender for being one of the strongest Pokemon of all time. At this point, Big 6 basically looks like an all-star roster, which is pretty much how it functioned. In a lot of ways, Mega Kangaskhan was similar to Groudon. Bulky as all get out, only one weakness, built to sit in the field and just pump out damage. But where Groudon had spread moves, Kangaskhan had some other nasty tricks up her sleeve. Fighting type move that gives the user an attack boost. Doesn't sound so broken, right? Except that Mega Kangaskhan's ability is Parental Bond, causing all attacks that it uses to hit twice. And that means that Power Up Punch gave not 1 boost, but 2. And the attack boost that the first hit did would immediately apply to the second hit.
Of course it would.
Compare this to the move Swords Dance, considered one of the best setup moves in the game. It also gives 2 attack boosts, but doesn't do any damage. Power Up Punch wasn't even the only issue. Fake Out is one of the best supporting moves in the game, as it stops a target from moving for a turn. It's intended to be quite a weak attack, except between Parental Bond, the same type attack bonus, and Kangaskhan's good attacking stat, Fake Out did a sizable chunk of damage all on its own. Fake Out is the only support that Kangaskhan could provide. With the strong priority move Sucker Punch, it could help finish off weakened foes. Or, it could simply KO your opponent's Pokemon itself, with its incredibly strong normal type attacks, Return, and Double Edge.
That Kangaskhan.
Pokemon, but sometimes
That Kangaskhan is the reason that I never played any kind of competitive, like, seriously.
it sure felt like it. And this is part of what made Kangaskhan so threatening on this team. Fake Out could support Xerneas as it's set up, sure. Sucker Punch could finish off a Pokemon that barely survived an attack from Groudon, yes. But if you ignored Kangaskhan and tried to deal with the Xerneas or the Groudon first, suddenly you could find yourself losing a Pokemon to Double Edge. Or worse, find Kangaskhan doubling its attack with Power Up Punch. Now you have to deal with both Primal Groudon and a souped up Mega Kangaskhan. Think about just a very simple lead: Xerneas and Kangaskhan. If you think Kangaskhan's gonna Fake Out while Xerneas uses Geomancy, well, you should probably use your Pokemon to try and get some damage on Xerneas, which basically requires you to attack with both of your Pokemon into Xerneas, as you can't be sure which one Kangaskhan's gonna Fake Out. But what if Xerneas protects while Kangaskhan just uses Power Up Punch? Well, if that's what you think's gonna happen, then you should double Kangaskhan. But if you guess wrong, you're immediately so far behind, as Fake Out plus Geomancy could just be game losing if you don't damage Xerneas. And this is just one example of the many Saw Trap puzzles that Kangaskhan would use. Of course, there is an elephant in the room. This team already has a Mega in Salamence. Isn't having 2 Mega Pokemon on the same team kind of bad? Well,
not necessarily.
Most of the time, putting 2 Mega Pokemon on one team requires some consideration, since most of the time you're not going to be able to bring them together to the same battles. And well, yeah, you're probably not bringing Salamence and Kangaskhan together most of the time, unless you're doing some weird like Intimidate, Tailwind, support Salamence shenanigans. The cost you pay to run 2 Megas is way lower than normal in this format. In competitive play, you bring 6 Pokemon to a match, but only select 4 each battle. Having 2 Megas on your team means effectively, each match you need to pick only 4 out of your 5, since you shouldn't bring both Mega Pokemon together. But since this team already has both Xerneas and Groudon, they're probably going to be coming to most of the battles on their own. So instead of picking 4 out of 5, you're instead really picking 2 out of 3. And that makes it way easier to justify leaving one of your Megas behind. To give you an idea of how broken Mega Kangaskhan was in Generation 6, let's look to the future, to Generation 7 when it was nerfed into the ground. In Generation 7, Game Freak changed Parental Bond from a 50% additional attack to 25%, removed Power Up Punch from its moveset, and nerfed Sucker Punch. And Mega Kangaskhan was still one of the best Mega Evolutions.
Jesus.
Now, consider Mega Kangaskhan before it was nerfed. With 4 of our attackers covered, let's talk about support. Starting with the strongest regional bird,
Talonflame.
Talonflame.
We stand Talonflame in this house.
Pokemon with an ability so good that it managed to be a top threat, even though it has a worse attacking stat than Amoonguss. Those
Really?
who didn't play during Generation 6 might be surprised to hear this, but Talonflame was one of the single best Pokemon in the game at the time, and could even keep up in a format dominated by Xerneas and Primal Groudon. See, in Generation 6, Talonflame's Gale Wings ability gave all of its flying moves increased priority.
Right.
And it turns
Gale
out,
Wings.
having a 120 base power move that you can use before any other Pokemon attacks for the turn is pretty good.
Yeah.
Groudon Sun meant that Flare Blitz could do good damage, while supporting moves like Quick Guard, Will-O-Wisp, Taunt, and most importantly Tailwind ensured that Xerneas could get its job done. Now, I don't want to talk too much about Talonflame, because while the original Big Six team featured Talonflame, when players updated and adapted the team, it was usually the first Pokemon to go. It's more important to understand Talonflame on a conceptual level, that the Pokemon in this slot's job is to primarily support your team, especially by making your partner Pokemon move before your opponent. But I'm getting ahead of myself, because there's still one Pokemon left that I've yet to cover.
Goddamn
and I've saved it
Smeargle.
for last for a reason. It's arguably the most toxic Pokemon in the entire history of the game. It's a Pokemon that turned the entire format into a nightmare, literally. Even now, almost a decade later, it's difficult for me to talk about. But you have to know, the one Pokemon that has come the closest to truly killing competitive Pokemon, Smeargle.
Menacing Smeargle Nightmare.
Seem like a very threatening Pokemon. It's a pure normal type with less stat points total than Fletchling. So if you didn't know anything about competitive Pokemon, you might think that all this buildup has been for some kind of joke.
About that.
But there's nothing funny about Smeargle. Smeargle's signature gimmick is simple. Via its signature move Sketch, it can learn any 4 moves in the game without qualifiers. The
Any
artist
4
Pokemon
moves.
allows its trainer to harness the unlimited power of the creative imagination, treating their very Pokemon itself as blank canvas. The 4 move slots, the 4 boundaries of the frame, the only ones an aspiring maestro need keep mind of. Let instinct and design meet, creating an infinite number of paintings, each unique in their composition.
Except they were never
Not
unique.
quite infinite. 620 possible moves to sketch. That's 146,337,616,680 possible movesets for Smeargle, bursting with different colors. And in the era of closed team sheets, no way for your opponent to tell which one you'd chosen until far too late. Funnily enough, despite the nearly limitless freedom that Smeargle afforded, there was one move that every single Smeargle ran.
Dark Void.
Every single one. A universe of creative potential plunged into darkness by one move. The signature move of another Pokemon stolen by Smeargle. Dark Void. Dark Void is, of course, Darkrai's signature move, but with Darkrai always banned from competitive play, feels much more like it belongs to Smeargle. And it turns out the copy is just as potent, if not more so. Dark Void is a move that puts whatever it hits to sleep with 80% accuracy. Both Pokemon on the opponent's side of the field. Now, keep in mind that Spore is commonly accepted to be one of the best moves in the game, and it only hits one target, and it doesn't work on grass types or Pokemon holding the safety goggles item. In other words, in exchange for just a 20% accuracy cut, Smeargle's able to potentially send half your opponent's team at a commission for up to 3 turns. Competitive battles rarely last much longer than 10 turns, and that was even more true back in 2016, when Pokemon like Primal Groudon and Xerneas could KO most of the Pokedex in a single move. Sending 2 Pokemon to sleep for 3 turns often meant that their time doing anything useful on the battlefield was over. The only saving grace was Dark Void's imperfect accuracy, making it risky to use. Right? Well, that 20% accuracy.
It's all coming back to me. Just the infinite dark void. God damn it.
Drop only applies some of the time, thanks to Smeargle's downright stupid ability, Moody. This is a goofy ability, one that raises one random stat by 2 stages every turn and lowers another stat by 1 stage, and that includes both evasion and accuracy.
Fucking Moody.
Often, when Moody is used, it's to create a Pokemon that sits in the field forever and can't be killed. One that can use almost all the stats and play a long game until the boost. So you might
This
think
was a good pick.
Smeargle would be a poor candidate for this ability, given its pitiful stats everywhere but its speed. That Moody would be more of a whimsical flavor text than anything actually useful. But if there's anything that I know about Smeargle, it's that it can suck the whimsy and joy out of anything, no matter how colorful. And in fact, those terrible stats are exactly why Smeargle was such a good moody user. See, Smeargle didn't really care about dropping either attack stat, or even about dropping one of its defense stats, because it was so weak and frail in the first place. The only stat drops that it really cared about were accuracy or speed. On the flip side, nearly every boost outside of the attacking stats was impactful. A defense boost in the right stat might let Smeargle live for another attack, sticking around to get another moody boost or to fire off another Dark Void. A gamble, given that a defense drop would rarely hurt it. And if it ever did get an evasion, speed, or accuracy boost, it could run away with the game. Accuracy meant that Dark Void could now never miss, evasion meant that you'd no longer have a safe way to get rid of Smeargle, and speed would mean your previously safe path of outspeeding it and knocking it out before it could Dark Void just got closed down. Sure, you were rolling the dice on Smeargle's boosts, and sometimes you wouldn't get anything useful, or Moody would actually end up hurting you, but for the most part, you were playing with loaded dice. Not literally though, there is an item called loaded dice, but that item wasn't in the game yet. Not that Smeargle would have wanted it. See, nearly every Smeargle ran Focus Sash to guarantee they could survive one move, which is pretty standard for frail supporting Pokemon, and a big part of the reason that those defense drops didn't matter. Nearly every Smeargle ran Focus Sash. Normally when I say that is because the rest of the items don't impact the way that you would approach the Pokemon, but in Smeargle's case, those rare mix-ups could instantly lose you the game. See, one common approach to Smeargle was to just taunt it. The thought being, if I'm gonna have to double attack this Pokemon anyway to remove it, why not just use one attack instead to taunt it and then stop it from doing anything annoying? So you taunt the Smeargle, ignore it with your other Pokemon, and it was holding the Mental Herb item, and now my whole team is asleep. Instant game over. Or no, maybe it was Choice Scarf Smeargle just to get Dark Void off before the taunt could come out. Oops, no. Maybe it was Focus Sash, but it's also running Magic Coat. And now, oops, I'm taunted instead and I can't use Protect to dodge the Dark Void coming out the next turn, which, by the way, is now unmissable because it got the accuracy boost. It turns out when a Pokemon can learn literally every move and can hold
Why do I get the feeling that he's speaking from experience with all of these examples?
any item in the game, there's almost no way to safely counter it. The point is that each Smeargle was a big question mark, except for Dark Void.
Yeah, the Dark Void was
the only move that you had to worry about. There were a ton of other moves that could immediately lose you the game if you didn't cover for them. Smeargle could use Fake Out, Follow Me, Wide Guard, Spiky Shield, Map Block, Trick Room, Helping Hand, Skill Swap, Roleplay. Heck, it could even transform into one of your restricted Pokemon, or their own Primal Groudon or boosted Xerneas. Now, look, you can do the thing where you name niche options with every Pokemon, but with Smeargle, these are all moves.
Yeah, I have a feeling.
Who knows what avant-garde Smeargle build you were facing? The fear of every artistic abomination you'd faced before would flicker before your eyes. The last thing you saw before being sent to an eternal slumber. To be honest though, there were two other moves that you could often count on. I've focused on Dark Void here, but Smeargle had another signature niche. In addition to being the only Pokemon who could use Dark Void, Smeargle was the only Pokemon in existence to have access to the two best commonplace supporting moves, Fake Out and Follow Me. This made it the perfect partner for, oh, I don't know, a Pokemon who maybe wants to set up on turn one? Forget Darkrai.
Right.
Smeargle was the true living nightmare. This is the final bit of synergy pulling this team together. Smeargle could get your team so much momentum that the other overwhelming parts of Big Six were liable to take over. You had some of the strongest offensive Pokemon of all time, supported by the most devastating support Pokemon ever created. Think about Smeargle with Kangaskhan, for example. On turn 1, you needed to be afraid of Dark Void plus Power Up Punch, Dark Void plus Kang Fake Out, Smeargle Fake Out plus Power Up Punch, Smeargle Follow Me plus Power Up Punch. If you thought you were safe to protect both your Pokemon to stall the first turn to wait out the Fake Out pressure, in a best case scenario, you would still be giving Smeargle the chance to get a free Moody boost. And in a worst case scenario, the Big Six player could call out your Protects, switch Smeargle into Primal Groudon, Talonflame, or Xerneas, and go for a Power Up Punch into their own partner, doubling Kangaskhan's attack while bringing in a Pokemon with a good matchup. Kangaskhan wasn't the only threatening Pokemon to pair with Smeargle either. Obviously, Xerneas introduces some of the same mind games, but there's also Mega Salamence. Smeargle could help get Tailwind up with Fake Out, and then exploit its now doubled speed to launch a Dark Void before your opponents could move, while Salamence went to town. But Smeargle's best synergy was, of course, its simplest, and its most frustrating, as a facilitator to Xerneas. Its counterplay was to Xerneas. Smeargle could have the counterplay for your counterplay. Trying to hit it directly? Get Fake Outed or forced to target Smeargle with Follow Me. Trying to use Taunt? Meet Crafty Shield. Trying to hit it with a spread move? Here's wide guard. And now you understand the whole team. I will say it's really difficult to get across just how powerful this team was, just how much terror and fear it caused, and the manner of the doubt it instilled. If you watched a previous video I made talking about chalk, you'll remember that I described that team as one founded on stability, a team that was remarkably consistent thanks to, well, consistent moves and Pokemon. Big Six was the opposite. It thrived on variance. This was not a team where everything was neat and tidy. You had to contend with Precipice Blaze accuracy, Dark Void missing, sleep turns, moody boosts, just to name a few. And still, even despite all that RNG, the team was downright soul-crushing. Maybe even because of all the luck involved. It was basically impossible to create a stable plan to take down this team. And more often than not, the luck would favor the player using Big Six rather.
The messed up part is that the one time I did try to mess around with Big Six, I did end up on a roll. So I know, like, I've experienced too just how well it works, absurdly so.
Than the one playing against it. Now, of course, lots of teams sound really strong when you sit down and explain their synergy. So I can't be sure if I'm really doing a good job getting across that this time really was different. That this really was the nightmare, not just for me, but for all competitive players. To try and hammer it home, I've got
Such a nightmare.
About Big Six. First, other than the restricted Pokemon, every single Pokemon present on Big Six was heavily nerfed at the next opportunity.
Fucking good.
Pokemon, as we mentioned, had Parental Bond's damage reduced, lost Power Up Punch, and got Sucker Punch weakened across the board. Salamence' Aerial Aid ability was nerfed from a 30% damage boost to a 20% one. Talonflame had Gale Wings changed to only activate while it's at full HP,
Good.
immediately dropping at several places on the tier list. And Smeargle not only was forbidden from ever using Dark Void again, as it was changed to one of the only moves that Sketch won't copy, and for good measure, they nerfed Dark Void's accuracy from 80% to 50%, even though Smeargle wasn't supposed to be able to use it.
Wait, why would they lower Dark Void's accuracy if they were just preventing Smeargle from learning it? Like, I struggle to think that it would be that good without Smeargle.
But they also reworked Moody to no longer interact with the evasion or accuracy stats, removing several of Smeargle's most frustrating outs. Primal Groudon was essentially removed from the game, and Xerneas isn't present in Scarlet and Violet. Not true nerfs, but you have to wonder after what Big Six
Dark
did.
Void is also able to be blocked by Wide Guard. Of course it is.
Pokemon would go on to win many more tournaments and future games. Okay, second thing about Big Six. It was so dominant that it is the only time in history where the Pokemon Company International stated that they were monitoring the situation and were considering banning Dark Void from competitive play. In the end, they decided against it, a decision that nearly the entire community disagreed with, but the fact that this was the only time that a mid-season ban was on the table should speak for itself. The third thing I want to say about Big Six is a little bit more personal. Those of you who watch this channel regularly know that I really love using weird, off-the-wall Pokemon, and that was way more true back in the day. The teams that I was using during this era of competitive play were often more strange than good, but I found some ways of making them work. Sometimes. I almost never played standard teams, a sentiment that still continues to my present day. Even nowadays when I do use standard Pokemon, I find a way of making them feel unique and my own. I brought Big Six to an official tournament twice. At Virginia Regionals where I finished in the top 16, and later Georgia Regionals where I finished top 4. The team was so strong, so unbeatable, that there were times where I faltered and believed that nothing out there could stop it, and that my only chance of winning was to use it. But again, getting ahead of myself. Because in order to truly understand this team and the impact that it had, we have to start at the beginning and go through the history of the single strongest team ever made.
Alright, you have my attention.
The dual restricted format officially kicked off on, as you might expect, January 1st, 2016.
Go figure.
Our story starts a few weeks earlier, at grassroots tournaments in Japan. Players here had already started experimenting with dual restricted teams before the format officially changed. Here, Big Six was born. And who should take notice other than my good friend, Marcus Hamon? If you watched my chalk video, you know that Marcus pretty frequently has his pulse on the Japanese scene. It's a pretty common pattern in our friendship that Marcus will tell me about a Japanese team, and a few weeks later, we see it popping up around the rest of the world for a bit. Hello, it's me from the future. So in doing research for this video, I discovered that the origin of Big Six is actually a little bit difficult to pinpoint. I was personally always under the impression that it came from Japan, and the reason for that I believe is because the earliest instance that I could find of anybody using Big Six was from a Japanese player who went by the name of Tony, who was a very accomplished Japanese player back in the day, and he used it actually in a friendly match against Team Germany. However, prior to Tony using this team in the show match, there was actually a UK player named William Tansley who got to #1 on the showdown ladder using 5 of the same Big 6 Pokemon, I believe. A lot of the records are a little bit hazy, to say the least. It's not easy to get information, but I believe he reached #1 on the ladder using Clefairy and Choice Scarf Smeargle, which, like, not exactly Big 6, obviously, but it wasn't so far away that I felt like I should not mention it. Anyway, many players believe the team originated in Japan, but of course, as with many ideas in Pokemon, it's hard to pinpoint an exact starting point.
Makes sense.
This time, however, it wouldn't be for just a bit, and the person helping to start the snowball that would eventually take over the entire game was none other than Marcus himself. Marcus brought Big 6 in its original form to the very first regionals of the format in Stockholm, Sweden, where he proceeded to win the whole thing. Our friend Billa also hopped on the team and made top 8 at that same tournament. Our first thoughts about the team were, wow, this is strong, really strong, but it's fine, we'll beat it. See, there's a universal
It is very
truth in
strong.
Pokemon. Any team can be beaten if you know exactly what's coming, given that you're willing to spend enough time and energy to figure it out. No matter how powerful the machine, once you figure out the power source, you can shut it down. I like to think of Pokemon metagames like a healthy ecosystem. Sure, there are predators at the top of the food chain, but they exist in balance with other teams, preying on the smaller teams and balking at the rare counters that can make them prey in turn. One single team can't take over the game entirely because the entire ecosystem would collapse. At least, that's what we thought before we met Big 6. And it's what seemed to hold true. At first. 1 week later, in Preganzio, I'm so sorry to all the Italians, regionals, Big 6 is on 3 of the top 8 teams, sure, but it doesn't win the event. On the same day, Wakefield UK regionals, again, 3 Big 6 teams, but none of them make the finals. Instead, it's Jamie Boyd's Rayogre and Alex Gomez's dual primals that keep the last battle safe. For a time, it seemed like the threat had been quelled. Ecosystem restored. How little did we know? Jump to a few weeks ago. There were 2 other tournaments in that time, and Big 6 has shown up in the top cuts, sure. It even won another regional in Glasgow, but it's not quite as dominant as we feared. People are experimenting with other builds, and it looks like they could give Big 6 a run for its money. But today is Valentine's Day 2016, the day of the first North American regional of the year, held in Doswell, Virginia. And with a few weeks of data under their belts, the North American players have a different idea about the format. They think that there is one clear best team. When the dust settles, not only are there 2 different Big 6 teams in the finals, 6 out of the 8 teams in top cut are all Big 6. There was no going back. Big 6 had proven that it wasn't just a flash in the pan, and now spread like an invasive species, snatching up precious top cut spots from less fortunate teams. Healthy ecosystem be damned. This team is a freak of nature. Think about how crazy it is to have a performance this strong so early into a format. It's not like everyone at the event was using Big 6, so to have this dominant of a showing was unheard of, especially given that this tournament was best of 1. You would think that with so much variance and so little room for error, the teams at the top would, by definition, need to have a decent bit of variety. But not for the last time, Big 6 played us for fools. Now, normally when a team is overperforming, the solution is simple. Counter team it. There's a natural law of Pokemon. If you know what's coming, you can design a response to beat it. But here's the thing. We were trying to do that, and it wasn't working. This was no regular predator. It was a highly intelligent, highly adaptable creature from another planet, straight out of your horror film nightmare. Capable
Literally.
of running on the fly to seemingly whatever we threw at it. Put simply, this team would mutate. When telling the story, it might seem like with hindsight, players should have been able to figure it out. But I want to be clear, again, this was a team unlike anything that we had seen before or since. Whether it was the tools of the new team, the roulette game you signed on to when you saw Smeargle on the other side, or just the fact that these new Pokemon were so strong, Big 6 seemed to have the tools to thwart its would-be solutions. The best minds in Pokemon were trying as hard as possible to beat Big 6 for the span of the format. Now, for a bit, players thought they could beat Big 6 with Trick Room, turning the high base speeds of the team against it. But then, Big 6 changed. And to see how, all we need to do is look at the teams at See, I said there were 6 Big 6 teams, but you might notice that only 4 of those teams fit the Big 6 mode that we've been dealing with before. The others incorporate a different Pokemon. And it's here that we talk about the first Big 6 variant, Big C. As an aside, you might be wondering why this team was called Big 6. Well, back in the day, Big 6 was just a term that we used to describe kind of the most popular team at the moment. Like, oh, what's the Big 6 of this format? However, this team was just so powerful and so different that it kind of just absorbed the name forever. So now Big 6 only refers to this team, and its variants are big, you know, with the letter replacement. Big B, Big C, Big A, etc. Big
Sure.
E is one. Anyway, in the Big C variant, you swap out Talonflame for Cresselia, and suddenly, the Trick Room your opponents were hoping would beat you is actually now much more of a boon for you. With Cresselia on the team over Talonflame, Big 6 can function in any form of speed control, be it Salamance's Tailwind or Cresselia's Trick Room. Cresselia's addition also allowed the team to drop some speed in favor of bulk, making it even more difficult to remove Primal Groudon. Cresselia also enabled one of my personal all-time favorite moves, Skill Swap. This was the year where Skill Swap was one of the best moves in the game, because not only could you steal your opponent's Parental Bond or Aerialate, weakening them significantly, but if you used Skill Swap on Primal Groudon, you would not only make it immune to all ground-type moves, which is its only weakness inside of Desolate Land, but you would also reset Desolate Land if it wasn't active. This was a way to regain control of the weather without needing to switch Primal Groudon out. So if Trick Room was up, Cresselia could regain control of the weather without needing Groudon to switch. In other words, with one single move, you could turn Primal Groudon into a Pokemon immune to its only 2 weaknesses. Now, changing just one Pokemon on a team might not seem like the crazy mutation ability that I just hyped up. After all, teams change all the time, right? But what's notable about Big 6 is how easily it seemed to accommodate these changes. It didn't matter that you changed out a whole Pokemon, the core of the team was so strong that it could easily function on its own. And what that meant was that Big 6 could change that slot over and over. And what that meant was that it seemed like it could adapt to anything. Imagine 6 months of trying to beat this team.
Genuinely,
These days, we would have
what the
watched
fuck,
team
dude?
came and went with a new regulation, a new rule set. But in 2016, the format lasted for a whole year, and players were spending all of that time trying to beat just one singular team and largely getting nowhere. Because there weren't just players trying to beat Big 6, there were also other players trying to improve it, to push it beyond the heights it had so quickly reached. This created a tug-of-war effect, where sometimes the format would suddenly lurch towards a team that seemed to be able to beat Big 6, only for the Big 6 player to adapt, update the team, and continue their unrelenting march towards victory. It
Jesus. Christ almighty, it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. Christ. I don't know what's worse. The fact that the core was so good, or the fact that you could just put whatever you wanted into it, and it would still function. I don't know which part of that is worse. Jeez. Where are we at? 4136. Let's... Yeah, let's do that a little bit. It's a little bit back. Yeah, I figured. Figured this is about far back enough.
just hyped up. After all, teams
Free from
change
the
all the time,
ads.
right? But what's notable about Big 6 is how easily it seemed to accommodate these changes.
I don't
It
know
didn't
what's
matter if you
worse,
changed out a whole Pokemon.
the fact that the core is so solid, or the fact that you could put whatever the hell you want and it still fucking
The
worked.
core of the team was so strong that it could easily function on its own. And what that meant was that Big 6 could change that slot over and over. And what that meant was that it seemed like it could adapt to anything. Imagine 6 months of trying to beat this team. These days, we would have watched as the team came and went with a new regulation.
Yeah.
But in 2016, the format lasted
Year
for a
long,
year,
baby.
and players were spending all of that time trying to beat just one singular team and largely getting nowhere. Because there weren't just players trying to beat Big 6, there were also other players trying to improve it, to push it beyond the heights it had so quickly reached. This created a tug-of-war effect, where sometimes the format would suddenly lurch towards a team that seemed to be able to beat Big 6, only for the Big 6 player to adapt, update the team, and continue their unrelenting march towards victory. It didn't matter how much we threw at it, Big 6 was unfazed. A giant.
I
who
also
all
miss
of
the
our
year-long
assaults was nothing
formats.
More than a tickle at its toes. Sometimes this would be through that 6th man slot. Sometimes
Like,
more minute.
okay, so in my mind, the benefit of the year-long thing is it gives players more time to adjust to the rule set, as opposed to how often does it change now? Like, frequent enough that I stopped paying attention. But I don't know, like, I don't know what, like, the rough estimate would be for how frequently it changes. But having a full year to figure out the format just feels perfect for me.
Team adjustments. Maybe
Yeah, 3 months is not long enough.
Or the stats of Kangaskhan change. We saw players run through a whole alphabet of 6 Mons. Big A with Amoonguss, the other big C with Crobat, the other big C with Clefairy, big E, big M, big R, big T, whatever letters player needed to shut down those foolish enough to believe that Big 6 could be stopped. But the 3 most popular variants were the original with Talonflame, Big C with Cresselia, and one last team which we haven't quite gotten to yet. Now, a quick caveat here on the counter teams that I want to mention. If you really wanted to build a team that could just hard counter Big 6, that was possible. It wasn't like this team was literally unbeatable, but beating just Big 6 and its variants wouldn't win you tournaments. Because despite being clearly the best team in the format, Big 6 still wasn't every team in the format. It probably only ever reached around 40% usage at its peak, which is still a disgusting amount.
A lot of
An example
players
of
just
this
like
were
over on the
so-called
next
X-ray teams that used both Xerneas
Yeah.
and Rayquaza. These teams were pretty good and had good Big 6 matchups, but they often would use Pokemon like Seismitoad in order to do it. Sure, your team might win hard in the most popular matchup, but what about against the other counter teams, or about the players who just wanted to pretend that Big 6 didn't exist? You still had to be able to beat them, and you were saddled with a 136-pound Toad on your back who came really just for one matchup. That's actually how much Seismitoad weighs. I don't know why I looked that up. Pokemon tournaments live on a wire's edge. At the time, losing 2 or 3 sets meant that your tournament was immediately over. So let's say you built the perfect counter team, and you could beat every Big 6 team you faced. Awesome, but that's not even going to be half of your opponents. And if you can't beat X-Ray, Dual Primals, Rayogre, or Radon, you weren't going to be able to make it to the finals to stop Big 6 from winning anyway. The only chance for redemption was to complete a task that seemed impossible. Build a team that could beat both Big 6 and the rest of the field. And every time somebody made a team that accomplished that first task, Big 6 adapted, leaving you with a mutant that had evolved into an evolutionary niche that was now obsolete.
God
If you
damn
wanted
it.
to beat both Big 6 and the field, well, the best choice seemed to be Big 6. For the rest of the
Course
season,
it was.
Big 6 reigned. It had down moments, sure, where those counter teams popped up, but it always came back to the top of the pyramid. Big
Of course
6
it did.
variants went on to win 7 more regionals, including several more events where more than half of the top cut was sporting the team. Just look at this graphic and tell me you've ever
Jesus
seen another team like this.
Christ.
In fact, there were only 3 events over the entire season where a Big 6 team didn't make top 8. Florida Regionals, which was instead won by well, it was me, but I actually don't really know what I was doing here. Eindhoven Regionals in the Netherlands, again, sorry for the pronunciation, not doing it on purpose, which still featured 2 Big 6 adjacent Zerndon teams in the
Sure.
finals. I mean, we're saying that this isn't Big 6 when it's really just running a different Intimidate Flying type Pokemon over Salamence, and the United Kingdom Nationals. To really understand the history of this tournament,
UK
you gotta
Nationals.
understand the way that the old Pokemon circuit worked. While these days we have 4 international championships a year, back in the old days we had national championships for many of the biggest countries. These tournaments were similar to today's internationals, the main exception being that people almost never traveled outside their own region. And if you
Sure.
went to one of these tournaments and you weren't from the region, you'd be made fun of online and called a wallet warrior. Just like internationals, nationals was just one step down from the world championships, the biggest tournaments you could find before the year's crowning event, with the qualification points to match. If you were developing a strategy to beat Big 6, there was a good argument to be made that you should be keeping it under wraps until nationals to have the best shot to make worlds. And that's exactly
Makes sense.
what Alex Gomez did. You might remember Alex Gomez's name from the very beginning of our history, when he placed second at a UK regional using dual primals. This time though, Alex wasn't at a regional with 87 players, he was at a national with 315. And this
Goddamn.
time, he wasn't settling for second, he was taking first, with the same archetype he
shit.
brought to Wakefield months before. Alex led a wave of dual primal teams that swarmed the United Kingdom, taking Big 6's spot seemingly overnight. Dual primals refers to the combination of both Primal Groudon and Primal Kyogre on the same team. While it might seem unintuitive since their weathers compete with one another, you were also using two of the strongest legendaries ever created. And of course,
Right.
both forms of primal weather meant that you would always have a counter to your opponent's Groudon or Kyogre. If you were winning the weather war, you were often winning the match. But with dual primals, if you were losing it, you still had a shot, because that weather could work for you as well. 6 of the top 8 teams were some version of dual primals, and the spots below them didn't look great for Big 6 either. Of the top 32 teams, only 3 of them even had Xerneas and Groudon, and the one that took second only bore a passing resemblance to the format's former top team. Big 6 had been down before, but rarely had it looked so out. Could this finally be it? Had light finally been visited upon the land at last? Had the tyranny without end finally ceased? The true test of that bright future would come in just a few days' time. Back in 2016, since most countries had their own nationals instead of one consolidated international, you'd get all the European nationals in a row, and German nationals were set to take place 1 week later. If Big 6 was going to pull its adaptation trick, this was the place. So German nationals go down, and yeah, Big 6 isn't dead. Look at all these familiar looking Zerndon teams.
Jesus.
But I say Zerndon, not Big 6, for a reason, because if you take a close look, you can see that quite a few of these teams weren't replacing the Talonflame or the Cresselia slot. They were including Cresselia and leaving behind one of the megas in favor of a very specific Pokemon, Thundurus. Thundurus not only offered speed control in the form of Thunder Wave, it was also one of the premier answers to Kyogre in the game, not just because of Thunderbolt, but because of its attack roleplay, which could be used just like Skill Swap to reset Desolate Land. Now, to be clear, saying that this isn't a Big 6 variant is kind of splitting hairs at this point. A lot of people would still say that this new variant was Big 6, but I do want to draw attention to this disruption of the true core of Big 6, one that's been a little bit more dramatic than anything.
I mean, the core of Groudon, Xerneas, Kangaskhan, Smeargle, that's what makes Big 6 Big 6, if you ask me.
We'd seen before, because it had far-reaching consequences. Big 6 certainly wasn't dead. A look at some of the following regionals shows more than enough proof of life, even with the versions that didn't feature Thundurus. But that wasn't the whole story. At other regionals, new teams are starting to rise to the top. Dual Primals, Raidon, Yveltal started to look healthier. Big 6 was still strong, of course, but for the first time, its blood had been spilled. What gives? Well, the answer lies back at those German nationals and that Thundurus adaptation. For the first time, the primary Big 6 adaptation had disrupted those core 5. It wasn't just the 6th man getting swapped out, it was a member of the core roster. We've said that the reason that Big 6 could function so well was because that core 5 are so solid together, and now they had been disrupted. This Thundurus variant, built to handle dual primals, wasn't as cohesive as the original variations, which only changed the Talonflame slot, and found itself weaker against other teams, especially opposing Xerneas, since you were likely dropping one of your physical attacking megas. Now, not everybody ran this variant. Some people stuck with Big C or Talonflame or the other versions, but those versions struggled against dual primals and other Kyogre teams. But the Thundurus variant had some Xerneas problems, and so something unprecedented had finally happened. The Big 6 variants now had to choose which matchups they were willing to punt on. This seemed like the culmination of months of counterattacks. At last, the weight of the adaptations had stacked up, 1,000 spinning plates, and while Big 6 might have a lot of hands, it finally needed to let just one drop. And that's when another team breaks through. The best example was at Italian Nationals, where players reveled in their newfound variety. You had X-Ray and Ryogre teams partying up at the top, and even non-primal Kyogre made an appearance in the top 4 with Choice Scarf. And there was just one
That's
Big 6
weird.
in the corner of top 8. Sullenly
A non-primal Kyogre. That's really weird.
sipping its drink and saying, "They don't even know I used to win every tournament." Yeah, buddy, we do know. Dual Primals had presented a big threat. As always, Big 6 adapted. But this time, the adaptation wasn't as airtight, and a ripple effect had spread. The burden of dealing with that one team had opened the door for other teams. The metagame, in other words, had shifted. Big 6 was still a competitor, but a humbled one, not the almighty overseer that had dictated the meta. And then came US Nationals. US Nationals back in the day was always the final tournament before Worlds. The last chance for players to finalize their understanding of what worked and test new ideas before the biggest tournament of their year. If there was one tournament to base your Worlds team off of, it was this one. And at this tournament, Big 6 came back with a vengeance. and a new look. It's time to talk about the final variant of Big Six that I
Fucking
haven't reviewed,
Bronzong.
one with a letter that we haven't even used. This is Big B for Bronzong. Funnily enough,
Bronzong is the one I remember most vividly.
Wakefield tournament. Since then, it hadn't seen much use. Alex himself dropped it for UK Nats. But Bronzong did one thing very well. Something Big Six needed right now. It matched up well into both dual primals and Xerneas. Xerneas had started to give the Thunderous variant of Big Six a hard time, but Bronzong's matchup into Xerneas was incredibly good. In addition to Trick Room turning Xerneas' speed against it, Bronzong's natural steel typing and ridiculous bulk gave it the special distinction of being one of the only Pokemon
Love the Persona music in the background.
to survive 2 Geomancy boosted Moonblasts, after which it could fire back with a Gyro Ball, a move that did massive damage even with no attack investment, because it does more damage based on how much faster the target is than the user. Bronzong is quite slow, and Geomancy doubles Xerneas' speed, capping out Gyro Ball's base power. Bronzong's dual primal matchup was a bit more complex, mostly because you had 2 paths forward. First, just like Cresselia, you could use Skill Swap. Bronzong also has Levitate. This would give you an advantage against opposing Primal Groudon, as you'd be immune to their ground type attacks. The problem was, other teams featured Skill Swap too, and if they used Skill Swap on their Primal Groudon, well, suddenly you wouldn't be able to touch them either. And so, Skill Swap actually wasn't the main weapon that Bronzong used. Instead, it featured 2 different Psychic type moves. Gravity, which not only causes all flying and floating Pokemon to land, making them susceptible to ground moves, but also increases the accuracy of all moves across the board, which combos with Hypnosis, a 100% accurate sleep move inside of Gravity. Of course, Gravity has the added benefit of making the inaccurate Precipice Blades always hit. And now, if your opponents skill swap their Kyogre or Groudon, you could still hit them with Precipice Blades. At the second most important tournament of the year, Big Six played its trump card, and the result was clear. Big B popped off at US Nationals, giving Big Six a way to disrupt dual primals, while only changing that usual rotating 6th man slot, keeping the core roster intact with its good matchups into everything else. The finals featured 2 Big Six variants, Big C against Dr. Aaron Traylor's Big BC, as he dropped Kangaskhan to have both Cresselia and Bronzong. In the end, the Big C team won. And for the last time before Worlds, at the biggest tournament of the year thus far, Big Six made up half of the teams in top 8. The other 2 Big Six teams, for those curious, were Big B. All our efforts to stop it had failed. At the end of the day, it had outlasted, out-adapted, and outfought its enemies. The 2 final hopes to take it down,
I do wonder how well Big Six would do in modern formats. I doubt it would do anywhere near as well, especially after all the nerfs, but like,
of the best players in the world, and it hadn't been enough.
just conceptually.
Had won. There were no more testing grounds, no more chances. If you were gonna try something new to beat Big Six and its various heads, you'd be going in without tournament practice. That is vital component in seeing if you held up versus the field. Anyone attempting such a feat wouldn't just be shooting blind, they'd be gambling their biggest tournament of the year. At every point of the year so far, Big Six had laughed in the face of those who thought it could be stopped.
Zacian would need to find a good buddy. I don't know how that'll shake out.
Big Six couldn't be stopped. We tried, but it was too strong. Almost a full season of dominance. Any falters quickly righted. The strongest team in history. The only thing left in its warpath was a world championship victory. But Big Six did not win the world championship that year. And originally, I intended to give you a very short version of that story here in this video. But this video is already about twice as long as I intended it to be. And truthfully, to properly tell the story of the 2016 Pokemon World Championships, I'm gonna need a little bit more time. So, I hope you'll forgive me, but this isn't the full story.
Oh, you motherfucker. Well, now I need to see if he ever fucking put it out. Best flying Pokemon, strongest Pokemon ever. Is this the one?
They say that hate is a strong word. I agree. It's not a word that I use lightly. And yet, there is one Pokemon that I can truly say, without reservations, that I hate. And it's the strongest Pokemon that Game Freak has ever created, Xerneas.
I think this is it. Alright. I'm gonna run to the bathroom real quick before we watch this. I will be back in a moment and I will play the music. Yeah, the auto ads have only been the minute ones. Yeah, hate is a strong word.
They say that hate is a strong word, and I agree. It's not a word that I use lightly. And yet, there is one Pokemon that I can truly say, without reservations, that I hate. And it's the strongest Pokemon that Game Freak
Fucking
has ever
Xerneas.
created, Xerneas. Let's address the elephant in the room, okay? There's another Pokemon that I am known for hating, and it's one that is also commonly considered the best ever made. But best and strongest are two different things. And between you and me, compared to how I feel about Xerneas, I don't actually hate Incineroar. He felt so might be the harbinger of death, but compared to Xerneas, he looks like a harmless little puppy. If these two legendaries knocked on my door, I'm welcoming the bird in for a nice home-cooked meal and leaving the deer out in the cold. And the thing is, I'm not the only one who feels this way about Xerneas. When I say that Xerneas is the most unfair Pokemon ever designed, I'm not shouting about some conspiracy theory I've cooked up. I'm the voice of the people. A people, in this case meaning competitive players, who also hate Xerneas.
You're
Every
kidding.
competitive player's list of most hated Pokemon looks a little bit different, but I know that there are a lot of competitive players who have this
Okay, no, it's not
legendary
being delivered
mascot
today.
sitting in that unenviable top spot. There are very few Pokemon more reviled, more feared, and unfortunately, more begrudgingly respected, because if you didn't respect Xerneas, you were in for a world of hurt. But here's the thing, that hate that we all feel towards Xerneas is also its biggest weakness.
You know, I never really hated Xerneas as much as other people do. But also, I understand why people hate Xerneas.
Because despite being the strongest Pokemon of all time, the strongest Pokemon ever created, Xerneas has never won the Pokemon World Championships. And the reason why actually centers around that very hate that makes Xerneas so memorable. But in order to understand just what the heck I'm talking about, we first need to understand why this Pokemon was so hated in the first place. So what does Xerneas do other than incite horrible negative emotions? What is Xerneas? Wait, you're not Xerneas.
Deer
Oh, you must
thing?
be Alice, the brand new character from this video's sponsor.
We're not doing this.
Unfair, stupidly broken hair, I think. Xerneas is, like I said, one of the most unfair, stupidly broken, poorly designed Pokemon that I don't even know how they had it, like, Xerneas is, in my opinion, the strongest Pokemon ever made. That's why I put it in the title of this video. And there's some room for disagreement here. Like, maybe you could argue that, I don't know, Zacian at full power was stronger, though I personally wouldn't agree. And maybe there's a couple other Pokemon that come to mind. But really what you can't disagree with is that Xerneas is the strongest fairy type ever made. And that fairy typing is a big part of what defines Xerneas. Fairy is already one of, if not the single best type in the game.
Yes.
It's got one of the best immunities around, a handful of useful resistances, and its only two weaknesses are relegated to types that are otherwise pretty mediocre offensively. Types that are known for their defensive attributes rather than their offensive ones.
Yes.
Offensively, it's only resisted by 3 types, and
What did that say?
rather than their offensive
You can't escape the funny horse game.
ones. Offensively, it's only resisted by 3 types, and when you're dealing with Xerneas, those resistances
Tell me that
are
was
the
a
only
graphic
thing
from
keeping you from
fucking
fairy
Uma
type
Musume.
obliteration. Everything in Xerneas' kit pushes it towards abusing its typing. First and foremost, its ability, Fairy Aura. This is a very boring ability. All it does is boost all fairy type moves in the field by a third. Wait, all? Xerneas gets a free life orb on all of its fairy type moves without even taking
Yes.
any recoil damage? The only counter to Fairy Aura is fellow Gen 6 legendary Zygarde's ability, Aura Break, which turns that buff into a nerf. The problem is that this ability is tied to Zygarde, a Pokemon who would struggle anyway due to its lacking offenses, but especially because it's a dragon type Pokemon. It's weak to Xerneas. This isn't even talking about the fact that Zygarde has a much better ability called Power Construct, which if you're using Zygarde, it's like the only reason to use it. So yeah, it doesn't actually work as a counter to Xerneas in reality. If I were forced to name a weakness that Xerneas has, it would be the fairly limited attacking move pool, where it struggles for coverage moves if you're not looking for a fairy type attack. However, this is only a weakness in theory because Xerneas doesn't actually need any coverage moves. Instead, it can just spam the broken fairy type moves at its disposal, like Moonblast and Dazzling Gleam. Moonblast is one of the strongest attacks in the game, having no drawbacks to using it, a huge chance for a useful secondary effect, and higher base power than other similar moves. Dazzling Gleam hits both your opponent's Pokemon, and despite not being that strong, well, actually, we'll get there. Don't forget about Xerneas' overpowered signature ability, boosting these already decently strong moves even more. But of course, none of this is actually what makes Xerneas so problematic. Like a strong fairy type attacker, yeah, it's like not, you know, it's not bad, but I mean, competing with like, I don't know, Primal Groudon, Mega Rayquaza, like surely it doesn't compare to those just with the fact that it's a fairy type attacker, right? That it's basically Gardevoir on steroids. The thing is, of course, that we haven't talked about what makes Xerneas so broken. The number one reason why Xerneas took over the game, and the reason why it is the single strongest Pokemon of all time, revolves entirely around its unique signature move. A move so strong that it threatened to ruin competitive Pokemon. I'm talking,
Geomancy.
of course, about Geomancy. This move lets Xerneas absorb Life Force, boosting all of its special attack, special defense, and speed by 2 stages. One move to boost 3 of your stats by 2 stages. You heard that right. Okay, think about it this way. One of the best moves in the entire game is Quiver Dance, a move that raises these 3 stats by 1 stage. This move is so good that it basically defined Volcarona for a while, a Pokemon with way worse stats and typing than the box art legendary Xerneas. Now think about using 2 Quiver Dances for the price of 1. It seems untenable. What was Game Freak thinking? Well, Geomancy has a catch. Rather than take 1 turn like Quiver Dance, it takes 2, a charging turn and then an activation turn. And now we understand why they thought this move was balanced. After all, this is basically 2 Quiver Dances over 2 turns, which is actually just worse than Quiver Dance, because like, with Quiver Dance, you can use it once and then stop. So I kind of get it. I kind of see what they were thinking. But there was an oversight, which is there is an item that allows charging moves to be used in 1 turn, not 2.
It does tread on repeated ground.
Used for moves like Solar Beam and Sky Attack.
I'm considering skipping ahead or speeding up
Without power
till it gets caught up.
With it, it's the Apex Predator. In 1 turn, Xerneas boosts nearly every stat it cares about, doubling its speed, special bulk, and special attack. Another way to think about this is that Dondozo doubles these 3 stats as well as its attack and defense stat, but it has significantly worse stats than Xerneas. It doesn't get a boost in damage from its ability, and it has to combine with Tatsugiri.
Yeah, let's just speed this up.
Getting these same boosts, except it starts out with way better stats. It has a way better ability. It doesn't get the defense boost that Dondozo gets, but it also doesn't force you to play 1 against 2 until your Pokemon is knocked out. And because Xerneas is so much stronger than Dondozo, and because it's getting this extra boost from Fairy Aura, nearly anything that doesn't resist Fairy is going to get KO'd in 1 single Moonblast. And even the Pokemon who do resist are most of the time going to be KO'd in 2 shots. In other words, for most Pokemon that resist Moonblast, you actually can't switch into Xerneas. Like, you can switch and take the first Moonblast, but because it's doubled its speed, it then gets to attack again, and then you get knocked out. But let's say your poison type is already on the field, and you tank that Moonblast. Good job. The thing is, you might not even be able to threaten that much damage back because Xerneas is also doubling its special ball. And if you can't KO quickly, you can just continue to click Dazzling Gleam or Moonblast again on the next turn and take over the game. The short version of this is basically, if you give Xerneas 1 free turn, your odds of losing the game are astronomically high. Xerneas' very presence warped the entire game around that 1 setup turn. When Xerneas was on the field, everything became about Geomancy. And when it wasn't, everyone should be asking, where is Xerneas? One thing common when Xerneas was legal is that oftentimes players would lose because they knocked out their opponent's Pokemon at the wrong time. Giving Xerneas a free switch in to replace a fainted partner when it wasn't threatened allowed it to Geomancy. And if it set up for free, it was often too much to stop. Because of the power it could gain from just 1 turn, Xerneas introduced incredibly high-risk mind games with its partner Pokemon, such as Moongus, Mega Kangaskhan, and Smeargle. Go all in on stopping Xerneas, and you might eat a spore or a dark void while it protects. Leave it to its own devices, and you could lose the game on the spot. And trying to cover for both your opponent's threats was often impossible. How do you deal with Follow Me or Fake Out plus Geomancy? What if Kangaskhan doubled attack with Power Up Punch while you tried to cover for Geomancy and doubled into a Protect? Even if you were somehow able to deal with a boosted Xerneas, you would still then have to follow up with its partners. And dealing with Xerneas in the first place was difficult because those partner Pokemon would continue supporting it the entire time. Follow Me doesn't suddenly stop being active once Xerneas becomes a raid boss. Despite not normally running any supporting moves, Xerneas became an excellent facilitator just because of the pressure it exerted. Geomancy was so hard to deal with, so hard to stop from going up, that players started to just try to beat it after the fact. Players would run Red Card, Haze, Roar, Whirlwind, anything to try and nullify the boost. And you know what? It still didn't work. Players would try to explicitly counter Xerneas with their teams, but Xerneas didn't care. It won anyway. Geomancy actually isn't the only way to get a boost. You can also get one by clicking subscribe. It won't double your special defense, but it actually might increase the rate that your hair grows at. And honestly, I mean, which is more useful? Xerneas has only ever been available for 3 years of competitive play, and for 2 of them, it was the undisputed most important Pokemon in the game. In Japan, there's a city called Nara. It features a huge park that's officially designated by the Japanese government as a place of scenic beauty. And I've been there. It is really pretty. But Nara is mostly known for something else. The deer. See, the deer that live in Nara Park are considered sacred. They roam the park freely, interact with visitors, and enjoy a happy life.
I've seen video of right? The Nara deer. They are quite cute.
There are a lot, and I mean a lot, of deer, and they know that they're sacred. You might think that they don't, but I swear they do, and I think if you've been there, you know that I'm telling the truth. These deer are bold. They're not like the skittish deer that I had growing up in my backyard. So the deer have no problems coming up to you and demanding food, fealty, money. They might even take a bite of your shorts. In short, it is a city, or at least a park, entirely run by deer. And that's what playing during the first year of Xerneas' reign felt like. Playing in a game totally run by the deer. In its debut season, 2016, Xerneas put up the most dominant performance of any Pokemon that we had ever seen. Before the format had begun, players had already discovered the strength of Xerneas. In Japan, players had already found great partners for Xerneas at grassroots tournaments. And more specifically, they'd built a team called Big 6, the squad of 6 Pokemon that most often accompanied Xerneas on its way to the top. I made a whole other video talking about Big 6, which is the strongest Pokemon team of all time. But in this case, it's actually crucial that we don't talk just about Big 6. Because yeah, that team might have reached unprecedented levels of dominance, and Xerneas was like a huge part of it, but But Xerneas didn't rely only on Big Six to see success. From the very beginning of the format, you would see entire top 8s filled with Xerneas, and it wasn't being used only on Big Six. Primal Groudon provided the most obvious synergy with Xerneas' fairy typing, but the other team members were a little bit more flexible, and eventually even Groudon would change. Later in the format, players discovered that Xerneas and Mega Rayquaza had good synergy in a team composition called X-Ray. This team used Mega Rayquaza
X-Ray, I like that.
Xerneas from the powerful Primal Pokemon, and it wasn't even the only restricted we saw paired with Xerneas, as we'd even see Xerneas Kyogre rise to prominence, making it to the quarterfinals of the World Championships. Xerneas, in all honesty, could work with pretty much any Pokemon because it was so strong.
Like Kartana.
It was primarily paired with Primal Groudon is because it just happened to be
I guess
tailor-made to remove
the 2019
weaknesses that Xerneas
maybe?
did have. Primal Groudon hits all of the fairy resists super effectively with its ground moves, and it also resists all of Xerneas' weaknesses while firing off the new signature move it got, Precipice Blades. Together, these two absolutely ran the game, fending off would-be counters with ease. And you might think that as the competitive meta developed, Xerneas would eventually fall off. And that really wasn't true. I really can't overstate how strong Xerneas was. Months after we started playing the format, you would still see top 8s entirely packed with Xerneas. This was a Pokemon that the entire scene was trying to beat, that players spent an entire year trying to solve, and still after a year of effort, we couldn't keep it from showing up on half of the top 8 teams at both US Nationals and Worlds. Xerneas would return to the ban list for the next 2 years, when Sun and Moon released. However, in the final year of Generation 7, Xerneas would return once more, as if it never left. I would say that 2019 didn't feature quite the same level of deer infestation, in part because there were just more viable restricted Pokemon, but Xerneas still performed incredibly well throughout the entire year and was the main Pokemon to beat. 2019 was the first time that the Pokemon Company introduced the idea of series, which is what we have now. Basically, instead of changing every couple months, which is the current format, we used to play one format for the entire year. And in 2019, that 1 year was divided into 3 different formats called Sun, Moon, and Ultra Series. Each subsequent series loosened the restrictions a little bit. Sun Series started out with 2 restricted Pokemon, but banned Mega Stones, Primal Reversion, and Z-Moves. Moon Series added Z-Moves back into the mix. And finally, Ultra Series put everything back on the table. What did this mean for Xerneas? Well, in a word, it was perfect. The other top contenders of the format were really reliant on Primal Reversion helped the Weather Legendaries, and Mega Evolution helped Rayquaza. But Xerneas, all it needed was the Power Herb, an item not banned in any of the series. I guess you could argue that the lack of Primal Groudon made things more difficult for Xerneas.
A little bit, but
Groudon
also
was
not.
the best Pokemon at resisting Xerneas because of its fire typing, so it kind of evened out. Xerneas did have some new threats to worry about though, mostly in the form of some new Steel-type Pokemon, like Kartana, Stakataka, Celesteela, Mega Metagross, and Solgaleo. Kyogre, Groudon, and Xerneas traded the top restricted spot throughout the year. But the thing is, a lot of the time, Kyogre and Groudon were winning with Xerneas. But Xerneas' new favorite partner wasn't a restricted Pokemon at all. It was something even better.
Oh
the
no.
best Pokemon ever made, Incineroar. Incineroar might be one of the only Pokemon who could rival Primal Groudon for synergy with Xerneas.
It always leads back to fucking Incineroar. God fucking damn it. 4 months of format is pretty good balance between meta evolution and keeping things. You know, I could see 4 months working.
Fake Out Pressure, the Intimidate ability to shore up Xerneas' weaker physical defense, which is also the one stat that doesn't get boosted by Geomancy, and this is a time before Clear Amulet existed, okay? And actually, even the fire typing was super useful for these pesky steel types like Kartana. It also helped that Incineroar could pivot out and bring in other Pokemon safely, so you could really easily switch between Incineroar and Amoonguss without having to make any kind of crazy risky predictions. Xerneas would pick up another dozen or so regional wins over the course of the season, and despite what I said about its decreased dominance, it won 3 of the 4 international tournaments, which for anyone
Are
unaware,
you
is the biggest
surprised?
level of event outside of
'Cause
the World
I'm not.
Championships. It was paired with Lunala in Latin America and Oceania, and with Rayquaza in Europe. The only international it fell short at was North American International.
Interesting.
Thanks to the brave efforts of one soul, who channeled his hate for Xerneas and managed to somehow take home the gold. It's me, okay? The brave soul who stopped Xerneas was me. For the second time, actually, but we're getting to that, okay? Despite the fact that it didn't win North American Internationals, it's still Xerneas all the way down. Only 5 of the teams in the top 6 team didn't feature the deer. Feels like I'm in Nara all over again. The only year that Xerneas has been legal and hasn't taken over the game was its most recent appearance, during the final year of Sword and Shield 2022. In addition to not being a good Dynamax Pokemon, Game Freak deployed the targeted Xerneas removal weapon, otherwise known as Zacian, meaning that for once we could rest easy. But again, I'll get to that.
Best Pokemon of all
Hopefully by
time
this
meets
point,
strongest
I've made it
Pokemon of
clear
all
just
time.
how freakishly strong this Pokemon was, and how infuriating it was to play against. It's been 6 years since I've been personally victimized by Xerneas, but my hatred and my resentment feel just as fresh as they did 6 years ago. Oh, how I wish I could forget. 2 years of my life spent battling the stupid deer at every opportunity, watching it win tournament after tournament, entire seasons crushed under the weight of one move animation that is entirely too long. I wish I could forget, but I remember it like it was yesterday.
How long is
2016,
Geomancy's
having hoped
animation?
that people had figured out something before going into nationals, going to nationals, seeing Xerneas win again, seeing another Xerneas in the finals, going to worlds, resigned to my fate, winning worlds, beating Xerneas. Wait, what? Yeah, despite its power, despite its dominance, despite everything that I've said about it, when push came to shove in 2016, Xerneas' introduction year, it did not win the World Championships. I did. But of course, 2016 was only the first year that Xerneas was legal. In 2019, despite having the highest usage of any Pokemon not named Incineroar at 2019 Worlds, Xerneas didn't win the
Whoa,
World
whoa, 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 whoa,
Championships.
wait, 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 wait. 83%? Holy shit. I knew Incineroar was like huge, but Jesus Christ. That's so many Incineroar. Holy crap.
Any Pokemon not named Incineroar at 2019 Worlds, Xerneas didn't win the World Championships that year either. And this time, I can't say anything about my 32nd place finish having anything to do with stopping it. Despite being the strongest Pokemon ever created, Xerneas has never won the Pokemon World Championships. In fact,
Good.
it's never even made it to the finals. How is that possible? If it's the strongest Pokemon ever, how come it didn't win? There's actually a pretty simple reason for this. The emotion we talked about at the beginning of this video.
Hatred.
Hate. Xerneas is so hated, so reviled, and above all, so strong that when you reach the biggest tournament of your life, you've got a very real incentive to make its life miserable. Now you might be thinking, wait, Wolf, earlier you said that Xerneas couldn't be counter-teamed, so like, I mean, what's going on here? But actually, I never said that it couldn't be counter-teamed. I just said that people's attempts to counter-team it didn't work, and that was true. Xerneas was too strong. But then people got better. Xerneas, as with any Pokemon, can be countered. The problem with attempts earlier was not that they couldn't stop Xerneas, it was that people failed to build a team that could both stop Xerneas and stand up to the rest of the field. A hard counter isn't really worth anything if it goes soft against every other team. And for most of the year, players were struggling to pull off that balancing act. But I can tell you firsthand, preparing for Worlds is a different kind of beast. This is the crowning tournament of the season, the one you pull out all the stops for. There's no longer any reason to keep cards close to your chest. The stakes of Worlds also make some players approach the tournament a bit differently. Ideally, you come up with a team that's both solid and has the right specific tools to handle the field. But that's not always the case. Some players, faced with the hardest tournament of the year, fall back on what's been working. Others make bold meta calls, higher risk, but oh so worth the payoff. And what I'm really getting to here is that if this is your last tournament of the year, the only tournament that matters for this format, and you've only got one last shot, you're gonna do everything in your power with all the experience you've gained over the course of the season, all the lessons you've learned to make sure that stupid deer doesn't win the world championships. Xerneas is the strongest Pokemon of all time, and ultimately that has been its undoing, because by virtue of its strength, Xerneas has had the biggest target painted on it of any Pokemon I've ever seen. More than Zacian, more than Calyrex Shadow, more than Urshifu, more than Incineroar. Xerneas was a Pokemon where if you didn't have the tools and team building, you literally would not be able to beat it. It demanded so much respect and so much attention that players built their entire teams around making sure they could stop it. And ultimately, despite the fact that it truly is so strong, the amount of Xerneas hate became too much, and it eventually fell. The team that I won Worlds with is packed with anti-Xerneas technology. I had not one, but 2 Pokemon that I knew could consistently handle Xerneas and its partners, because as we know, solving for Xerneas isn't as simple as solving for just Xerneas. The first Pokemon was Mega Gengar with both Sludge Bomb and Taunt, a fake-out immune poison type who could hit Xerneas before it got Geomancy up and could trap my opponents on the field, preventing them from repositioning their support Pokemon. Taunt was really great against Smeargle and Amoonguss, who really relied on their supporting moves to actually have an impact. The second Pokemon I used was Lumberry, Gyro Ball, Safeguard, Trick Room, Bronzong. In addition to being one of the only Pokemon in the format that could stand up to 2 Geomancy boosted Moonblasts, Bronzong could tank a Dark Void or a Spore, wake up thanks to the Lumberry, turn the speed around on Xerneas with Trick Room taking advantage of the fact that Xerneas had just doubled its speed, set up Safeguard to stop future Dark Voids, and do heavy damage back with Gyro Ball, which does more damage the faster the target is compared to the user, again abusing the fact that Xerneas is forced to double its speed.
Of course.
And the team that won in 2019 is a similar story. Naoto Mitsubishi, the world champion, packed a slow steel type of his own,
Stakataka.
Trick Room Stakataka, who fulfilled much of the same role that my Bronzong did. In addition, he ran a Primal Groudon that could tank Moonblast.
I like Stakataka a lot, just because of his name.
Moves. Wide Guard for Dazzling Gleam, as well as Trick Room to mess with Geomancy. Scroll on down to the runner-up, Hirofumi Kimura. He's got the same Primal Groudon and a Trick Room Steel type, but this time it's his restricted Pokemon, Necrozma Duskbane. I mean, technically Ultra Necrozma, but whatever, we don't need to get into that. On top of that, he turns Xerneas' old partner, Mega Kangaskhan, into its biggest nightmare by outfitting it with a move that we talked about way back at the beginning of this video, Roar. When I last mentioned Roar, it was to say that it frequently didn't work in beating Xerneas. And honestly, that's still true in a vacuum. Like, if it's the only thing you have to beat Xerneas, it's probably not going to be enough. But Roar wasn't
It's never enough.
tool that he had to stop Xerneas. It was just one of many. With Primal Groudon's great matchup and Ultra Necrozma's great matchup, Roar was, I imagine, more of a tertiary threat, where with Primal Groudon's excellent typing matchup as well as Ultra Necrozma's excellent typing matchup, Hirofumi was a little bit less reliant on Kangaskhan to stop Xerneas. But having the option could be really nice. Roar on its own wasn't enough, but Roar in combination with these other great Pokemon was actually quite effective. I imagine Roar could also be used as a way to guarantee that Xerneas doesn't get boosted. Like, maybe you're okay taking a Moonblast or a Dazzling Gleam as long as it means that Xerneas isn't setting up. I think
Makes
the lesson
sense.
here is that while I don't know for sure whether the players in the finals of the World Championships hate Xerneas as much as I do, you can tell from their team building that they certainly respect it. I think it is also worth noting that part of the reason Xerneas hasn't won the World Championships has to do with luck. Like, Xerneas has only been legal for 3 World Championships, and for one of those, it had a vicious guard dog barring the way to the tournament. Its matchup versus Zacian and its interaction with Dynamax was so bad that it was like borderline unplayable, I think. So effectively it only had 2 tournaments, and 2 tournaments is not that many chances. Xerneas came close to winning both of these tournaments, and it very well could have if things had gone a little differently. So why does this all matter? Well, for one thing, it reveals this interesting pattern in Pokemon where often the most dominant Pokemon of the season ends up faltering thanks to its status as public enemy number 1. We saw the same thing happen with Calyrex Shadow Rider last year. A Pokemon widely accepted as the strongest restricted Pokemon at the time ended up underperforming at the World Championships because people were so ready to handle it. And it's not like legendary Pokemon are the only times we've seen this happen. Mega Kangaskhan was the Pokemon to beat back in Worlds at 2014. It dominated the entire season going into the World Championships, and then at Worlds itself, its best placement was top 16. If you look through the history, there are more examples as well of other Pokemon that dominate an entire season and then fall short at Worlds. It's an illustration of how much of a Pokemon tournament comes down not just to understanding how the Pokemon operate, but how the people operate. Worlds winning teams don't just read the Pokemon, they read the players, anticipating the literal emotional state.
I mean, there's a lot of mind games going into any kind of competitive thing.
In fact, it decides entire tournaments. When a Pokemon is super powerful and popular, Pokemon that are weaker generally but have a good matchup into it can really shine. There's no chance that Bronzong pops off the same way it did in 2016 if Xerneas
not at all.
Likewise, Farigiraf, while it is a good Pokemon in its own right, owes a large amount of its popularity last year to its phenomenal matchup into Shadow Rider. Finally,
yeah, that sounds right.
The reason why Xerneas' failure at the World Championships is relevant is because I'm afraid that it might not be the case for much longer. The past 6 years have been nice. I feel like I've been healing from my hate thanks to the break from Xerneas. But that's in large part because we were spared the presence of Xerneas in Scarlet and Violet. And this is a really good thing, and not just because I personally hate Xerneas, but because I think that if Xerneas had been present, it would have been borderline unstoppable. While Dynamax didn't favor Xerneas, Terastallization is handmade for it. Xerneas' only real abusable weakness is that its defensive typing is weak to Steel. But if Xerneas could get around that at will, Terastallizing to, Fire, I think it really truly might have been unstoppable. This isn't even talking about how it could use Terra Blast to get coverage for any single type in the game. And of course, this was just a hypothetical. Like, oh, if Xerneas was added to Scarlet and Violet, it would have been bad. But I am personally worried that
Champions,
might
though.
become a when soon. Legends ZA is on the horizon. The first game set in Kalos in 12 years, since Xerneas first appeared to wreak havoc. And I think it's a fair bet to say that Xerneas is probably going to be in Legends ZA. But to be honest, that's not even the game that I'm really concerned about. After all, I mean, Legends Arceus didn't feature competitive play, so maybe I'll be safe. But no, the trailer that spurred fear in my heart was a different one. The announcement trailer for
Champions,
though. Now, you might have seen the nose that terrestrialized to water in front of Mega Charizard and thought, oh wow, cool, both Megas and Terrestrialization in the same game. But when I saw this, dread seized my heart. Because when you put these two games together, you are faced with the fact that Xerneas most likely is going to be champion, and it most likely will be able to Terrastalize. And if this happens, I don't know if there is any amount of hate that could stop Xerneas from trotting to its first World Championship victory. Only time will tell if my premonition comes true. So for now, join me in reveling in our small victory against Xerneas. Not that it's been vanquished, defeated forever, but that we have forestalled it for now. Because despite its status as my least favorite Pokemon of all time, as the strongest Pokemon to ever be playable in competitive play, it still hasn't won the World Championships. For now. Thanks for watching. If you like this video and you want to hear more about Xerneas' role on the strongest team of all time, you should check out the video I made talking about Big
Ooh, champions though. Champions though. Christ. Alright. He does make good videos. I'm gonna go grab a caffeine. So bear with me for just a moment. Sorry, I saw something out of the corner of my eye out the window and I was like, what is that? Turns out, it's just a post. We got our mail. Alright. Am I gonna be hit with the karaoke? Will be fun to go back to that video in 2 to 3 years. Yeah! Oh no, it's gonna be Danganronpa. That's 3 times this stream. 3 fucking times. I guess we're going back to Danganronpa.
Wow.
Okay, never
I
mind.
can't believe every single one of them kicked you in the dick.
Oh shit, it's karaoke. I wasn't ready for karaoke either. Shit. Got another one of those in ya? If not, I can make this work. I just gotta like think this through because I definitely neglected to do that. Hi, you get the big me. While I try to find karaoke tracks. You're 400 points short. I could cheese it. No, I can't. Not without a second person here. Well, guess we're karaokeing until you get those 400 points. You have any song requests? Just do keep in mind I am not a good singer. But I could try. If not, I have a couple ideas. Um, you weren't ready for this either. Yeah, I know. I don't know why I even put it on there. Alright. I'm ready for this section to be like a fucking nightmare for copyright. Karaoke track list. Select the good font. Give it the outline. Set the outline to the right size and color. Alright. Okay. This needs to be here. Not on the 16:9 though. Wait, shit. I want it on the just chatting one. Hang on. I've never done a karaoke stream before, just so you're aware. Add existing, give me the karaoke list. Why did it? Give me the full properties again. God damn you. Hello. I apologize for all the in and out in the last like hour or so. Okay. First things first, I don't think it's on this scene. So I am going to replay the spin the wheel because it was not on the the break screen. I don't think. Just in case. Alright, what are you doing here? Go away. Okay. To explain what just happened, my mother has an oxygen machine on her night table, and she needed help with maintenance stuff for it. And as the only person who knows how to do anything technology in the house, I I was the one being asked. And it's a health thing, so it's kind of important. Okay. You know what? This entire bot is going to hell. Let's start with the two of these. We're doing tier lists now. Give me this so that I can music. And give me this. Okay. So. Is this all Naruto? Okay, yeah. Alright. Have you ever watched Naruto? I know a lot of people have. Also, I moved you from this monitor to this monitor. I have 3. If you haven't picked up on that already. Um, Alright. So we're going to be doing a tier list of Naruto openings. If you look here, they all have numbers. If the number is white, it's from original Naruto. If the number is black, it's from Naruto Shippuden. There are 20 Shippuden openings. We're going to listen to all of them and make a tier list of them. So we're going to go all Naruto openings. And we're going to bring this over here. Alright. I should... screw it. Alright, so the first one is Rocks by Hound Dog. You know, it's been a long time since I've actually listened to this one. Alright, so rocks. I'm gonna put that in B tier, to be honest with you. It's alright. It's not the worst, but it's not the greatest. Pretty middle of the road, if you ask me. Alright. Also, don't ask why I had these, like, the two tier lists bookmarked. I've been thinking about making tier list stuff for a while. I love that one a lot. I'm not gonna lie, that's going right in S. Like, no questions asked. And if you don't like it, too bad. You have returned. So I spun the wheel, we got tier lists. So I started doing a tier list of Naruto openings. Understandable. It happens. I'll catch you up to speed once I put this one in. I'm gonna put this one in D tier. I don't like this one a lot. Alright, first one, rocks, middle of the road. Second one, Haruka Kanata. Perfect. What is this one? Turning sadness into kindness. Alright. Not great. D tier. And the reason I was gone is because of a a health related thing for my mother. She needed help with, so kind of could not put that at one off. You might get a little bit of karaoke anyway. We are fighting. Right here, right now, bomb. I have the Colorado right here, right now, bomb. Get your fire right here, right now, bomb. I have the Colorado right now, bomb. You get your fire back. Alright. You're gonna hate me for this one. It's only A tier. I know it's like a lot of people's favorite, and a lot of people would put it in S tier. Shockingly, no. I mean, Twitch chat struggled a little bit for a little bit there, but energy-wise, I've done fine. We're ranking Naruto openings. First through fourth. A lot of people really like this one. I can only cap it at A. That's the highest I'm willing to put it. And even then, although I did have to like get up and get my blood flowing during the reacting to stuff. Yeah. It's a good song, it's just okay. Yeah, Twitch chat crashed. I did not crash. Also, I do have one thing to show you after this song. Here, I got you. The highlighted one is the current one. Alright. That one's going top of S. I love that one so much. That's my favorite Naruto opening, period. Oh, yeah, yeah. So, let me. Danganronpa, Spark and Zero. Japanese lessons. React to stuff. Sent me back in time to the bloody war of 2016. Danganronpa, again. Karaoke to skip Danganronpa. And then tier list to skip karaoke. Christ almighty. Yeah, that one is very, very good. Let me answer my mom's text. Hang on. Yeah, that one is definitely like great. Because it got picked by the wheel 3 times, and then one of them got skipped. Okay. Alright. That one's gonna go in B tier. So, yeah. These are the entries. These are the results of the spins in order. That's why V3 is there 3 times. I do like that one. That one's not my favorite. I like the song more than I like the opening, if that makes sense. I don't know how to describe it. Alright. Next song. So, a lot of it does come down to song preference for me, but if I happen to not like the opening version, then I'm not. And especially like if something is like very obviously wrong with the opening, like this, where it's just using clips of the show in lieu of any kind of animation. At least with at least with this one, it was like the memories between them as it like panned and twirled down to them. This was just generic run cycle, like laid over random clips for a good chunk of the opening. So I don't like it. You're in ads too, aren't you, Nikhil? Yeah. Yeah. I gathered that. That's why I like lingered on the tier list. I am gonna have to get up after the final part 1 because it's just that time of day, I guess. Flow is such a good band, man. See, this one suffers from a similar problem that the one before it does, where it's not like anything spectacular, but at least it has like custom animation to it. And then the song puts it at top of A tier because Flow is just that good. Top of A tier. Not quite put over the edge for S tier, but it is definitely A tier. This one, I'm not so sure though. It's no Flow. I'll be here. No. Okay. That one, I'm also gonna put in D tier. But it's gonna be like top of D tier. And the reason for that is because the song is pretty good. But the opening is not great. It struggles very hard to keep any semblance of cohesion. Anyway, I will be back in a minute again, I guess. Because god fucking damn it. Where's the music? You know, for years and years I was getting asked, well, why don't you do your streams earlier in the day? That way you can have more people stop by. The answer is because of shit like this, where I'm constantly having to get up. And it's quite annoying. Quite annoying. Anyway, onto the Shippuden. Three, two, one, max, unlock. Everybody stand up. I gotta kill it to bound this contact. Phenomenal speed, hot down. I'm like, yeah, come on. Everybody hands up. When that's the hero to come back. So, guess I gotta beat a countdown. Cause of 3, 2, 1, make some noise. Alright. Heroes come back. Easy S tier. Easy S tier. Immatabitazio. Con the distance, mi hatten sono blu. I want it. You want my phone? Mademo, mada wasurata nai desho. My friend, Mademo, mada waeteru kana. You are my dream. Hajimete koso mada nai de. Wanna go the distance. So, as much as I love the song, I can only put this in like mid the middle of B tier. It's not a great opening, if you ask me. But I love the song. So it's like I gotta like find the right balance for like song to actual like opening. I'm gonna get lynched. This is gonna be the one that I get lynched for. C tier. I love the song. I don't like the opening. It's and I don't even like the song as much as most. I got B tier feels right for that one. That one's really hard to place for me. All right. Okay. I gotta put that one in D. Not a big fan of that one. If Bluebird doesn't get me lynched, it's gonna be this one. Hmm. Well, in it for the haul, huh? As much as I love Flow, I'm not a big fan of this song in particular. Yeah, sorry. I do like it more than Bluebird, though. Sayonara inai sakai da wa karu kana Kimi no inai sakai datte ushiri wo tamu yo koete koete Alright, that one, I'm gonna go high A. Okay. It is just okay. I like the song, but it's just okay. This one's hard. I don't know where to put this one. Hmm. Huh. I, hmm. I think I'm gonna put it in B. Nope. 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 Wait, no. This is not the one I thought it was. I had it backwards. Sorry. I don't know how I confused the two. Frosting. The tone of this one is very weird, honestly. But I do like it a lot. Alright, so this one actually. It's gonna go there. No, thank you. You know, I do like this one more than I thought I did. Alright. I'm gonna put that one in A tier. I do like that one a lot. I do like this one a lot. It's probably the one that sticks out to me the most out of all the Shippuden ones. Like I know I instantly put it in S tier with two really good Part 1 openings and the first Shippuden opening. So that should be very indicative of how I feel about it, but it's definitely the one that sticks with me the most over the years. Alright, this one is a good A. Okay. I do like this one. Where did I put this? Did I put this? I did put this. It's A tier. Definitely a good one. Hmm. This one is a little bit harder to place because it does stand out, but it is not as good as the other ones surrounding it now. And you know that I will not put the one that has been memed all the way to death anywhere that is not in the middle, because that will be too much. Okay, I'm done with that. I tried. I'm okay at improv, it's just I can't keep it up for that long a time. Especially for a song I haven't heard in a while. So I definitely need to I definitely like need to stop. But yeah, this one I don't know where to put this one. I know where to put the one before it and the one after it. But this one, I don't know. I guess I could put it like C-ish. Moving on. I just don't want to listen to Silhouette right now. I'm gonna be honest with you. I've heard it too many times in my life. Alright. After these last couple, we'll spin the wheel. I'll run to the bathroom, and then we'll do whatever the next activity is. Unless it's karaoke. Did I take karaoke out of the wheel? Oh, I gotta take karaoke out of the wheel. Because I am not good for karaoke right now. I don't know where to put this one. I know I've said that for a lot of them. Like, I like the chorus, and I like the animation, and the, like, artwork for it. The song as a whole, I don't know. put it bottom of B. Yeah, not a big fan of this one. I get what it's going for, I just don't like it. Ah, yes, my favorite. My actual favorite. Alright. We did it. We made it to the end. I don't know, maybe it's just me. This did kind of drag a little. I was enjoying, like, thinking about it, but I definitely could have, like, formatted this a little bit better. Maybe watch them all back to back first and then started ranking them. I don't know. But we did it. And I'm gonna screenshot it. And we're gonna spin the wheel. For what to play. It's gonna be Xenoblade 3. Okay. That's fine. I'm actually okay with this. So let me turn on that, turn off this, swap this over, mute my, and run to the bathroom.